Lunch Money, presented by FantasyGuru.com on Bettor Sports Network.
Good morning, my neighbors!
Good morning, everybody.
What day is it?
Today is Wednesday.
Let Wednesday begin!
I don't know how I feel about it.
Man, you really need to relax.
Yeah, maybe we could talk about something else.
Like what?
Let's talk about playing football.
They say baseball is the national pastime.
You want to try a real sport?
Calm down.
No, you calm down.
We have got to get this show on the road.
Let's do this thing.
Showtime.
Who's hungry? Time now for Lunch Money, presented by FantasyGuru.com. Here's Kyle Elfrink.
Today we got something you don't see every day in the world of baseball. We welcome you into Lunch Money. I'm solo again. Our buddy Ray Flowers is still a bit under the weather, so it's another 3 hours of me. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are as well. Hit us up in the chat room here at the Bettor Sports Network. We will be glad to converse back and forth. If you got any questions, any thoughts, opinions, whatever they are, jump into that chat room. We always do enjoy hearing from you guys. Want to thank our producers right off the top. Got Heather Klein and Josh Winchester helping us on this Wednesday. And as noted, Ray is still feeling a bit out of sorts, so we'll give him another day of resting and hopefully some relaxation. The man needs some time off, don't you think? I think we can all agree to that. So today, we'll give him a couple of hours off, and best wishes to him as he continues to try and recover. I said that today we get to see something in baseball that we don't normally get to see. No, it's not, action in Arizona or Florida that matters. It still doesn't. It really doesn't. But today we've got some interesting matchups in spring training. I was checking this out this morning. We've got the World Baseball Classic going on, which I will say last night, we crossed a very important milestone in the Elfrink household, critical milestone in the Elfrink household. I got to listen to my first game on the radio this calendar year. Oh, yeah. I was up late listening to baseball. Where were they playing? Japan? I don't even know. Taiwan? I don't know. They're playing somewhere across the Pacific Ocean. And yes, I was indeed listening to the Netherlands and Cuba in game one of the World Baseball Classic. I'm a radio baseball nut, but that was game one. I haven't really listened to much spring training at all. And I guess I'll count the WBC as a game that matters, where the rest of spring training really doesn't. So let's call it the first game I got to listen to that mattered. That's what took place. But anyway, the WBC is here. Those games across the Pacific continue today, tomorrow. The games that are in Arizona and Miami, and that's when you get into the Dominican, the U.S., Mexico, of course, the baseball powerhouse that is Great Britain. Those games will start up this weekend. But today, those teams have exhibitions. And guess who they're playing in the exhibitions? How about this one? San Francisco Giants against Team USA. San Francisco against the rest of the country, which is kind of how it goes anyway. So why not do it in baseball as well? But yeah, the Giants are taking on Team USA. And I don't know if you've looked at the WBC roster for Team USA. It's pretty significant. Mike Trout, Kyle Tucker, Paul Goldschmidt, Mookie Betts, Bobby Witt Jr., Nolan Arenado, Pete Alonso, Cedric Mullins, Tim Anderson. Got a lot of hitting. It's got a lot more hitting than it does pitching. Now, the next question, and I know what you're wondering. Okay, Kyle, this is kind of cool. I get to watch the San Francisco Giants up against Team USA. Can I get odds on it? Can I maybe take the underdog Giants against Team USA? I don't think you can. These are considered, it's kind of funny. All we do is exhibition baseball in Florida and Arizona, and you can wager on those games, even though they're exhibitions. But I suppose this is even an exhibition of an exhibition. And so if you go to a place like DraftKings, which is usually, where I go, I mean, hell, you can gamble on cricket over there. This game's not listed I don't think so. Let me check a World Baseball Classic link. Maybe it's listed there. No, they're only doing the official games. So although we can wager to our heart's content when like Philadelphia takes on Detroit and Florida on March 11th, you can bet all you want on that. We're not allowed to wager on a game we might actually watch. The San Francisco Giants going up against Team USA. Why is that? And I know what they're going to say. It's an exhibition. What the hell's spring training? That's an exhibition too. So I don't know. It'll be fun. We got other games too. Let's see. Houston is against Venezuela. Boston's against Puerto Rico. And Cleveland is against Mexico. And there are some other games. I think Miami is taking on Israel. You know, if you can't beat Israel, Miami, come on. But San Francisco, man, talk about a challenge. Who's got the pitching matchup for the Giants? Let me pull that up. Who is charged with saying, hey, go out there and get your brains beat in by this all-star team? Go out and do that. Let's see. Pitching for San Francisco today. Looks like it's going to be Anthony Desclafani. Well, he's a vet. He's not going to get too beat up. Okay, I like it. I like it a lot. We will follow the action in spring camp. That San Francisco game's later. We'll be off air by the time they get going in Arizona. But that still leaves us plenty to follow. All the action in Florida. We got spring tidbits. We got news and notes. We got more third basemen. We've got more NL East. We are going to have fun over the next few hours. Let us begin, though, with our lunch menu. That is where we always start here on the show, even if it's only me. Let's talk about the NFL, shall we? And I must say that there comes a point. I've been doing this, talking on the radio, on BSN, local affiliates, all that stuff. Been doing this for, let me think here, about a quarter of a century. Really, it doesn't seem. I hope I don't look that. Like, do you ever look and go, man, that guy looks like he's been doing this for a long time? Maybe you do. I don't know. I like to think I look the same way I did when I was 18. I don't. But anyway, I've been doing this for a long time. I got to say, yesterday I was fascinated by people in my business, not necessarily, what I do on the radio, but like people in the media right now. I was fascinated by how they handled the news on Lamar Jackson. Now, we have talked a lot about Lamar Jackson here on the show, and my stance has not changed one iota since we started talking about it. I applaud the Ravens for what they are doing. I applaud the Ravens for giving out that non-exclusive franchise tag that we talked about yesterday. But what has me so confused about my brethren in the national media or anybody who covers football is they appear to be scratching their heads wondering why Baltimore would do this, and B, why nobody else in the NFL is like super, super interested in Lamar Jackson. Like, to me, it's incredibly obvious. Like, I saw a couple of spots yesterday. Lamar Jackson gets hit with the franchise tag, and they're like, oh, what a screw up by the Ravens. There are going to be so many teams after Lamar Jackson. People are going to want this guy. He's 26. He's a former MVP. This guy, you screwed up, Ravens. What? And then within like 2 hours, we've got multiple reports saying, oh, this team's not interested. That team's not interested. Atlanta doesn't care. The Jets don't care. The Dolphins don't care. Houston doesn't care. Now, then the people had to double down and say, there must be a gentleman's agreement. There must be some blackballing going on in the NFL. Everybody's agreed they're not going to pay Lamar Jackson, and he's going to be stuck in Baltimore. No. What people seem to fail to grasp, like they're really struggling with this idea, is what Lamar Jackson actually is. I think all people see with Lamar Jackson is like highlight here, highlight there, highlight. And they're awesome. They're great. Lamar Jackson does things we've probably only seen Michael Vick do. Honestly. That's really it. At least, his way of doing it. He's not a big guy. He's twirling around. He's racing around, guys. It's incredible. But those are the highlights. What's happening in real life? What's happening in real life is he isn't a passer. What's happening in real life is you don't want Lamar Jackson throwing the football 35 times a game. What's happening in real life is that Lamar Jackson the last 2 years has come out of the gates guns a-blazing. And then he has reverted to an average quarterback, and then he has gotten injured and not played down the stretch in both of the last 2 seasons. Well, why is that? Well, it's something we've talked about since Lamar Jackson got in this league. What he does is uncanny. What he does is astounding. What he does is fascinating. Have we ever seen it before? All this stuff. It's true. But what he does not have a long shelf life. It doesn't. It doesn't have a long shelf life. There are not guys in their 30s doing what Lamar Jackson does. There are a lot of QBs doing what Daniel Jones does in their 30s. They're all over the place. But these exciting QBs, they don't last. They just don't last. You know, and go on and on down the list. I don't care really who you throw. They just don't last. And maybe you'll find one. But that's it. You know, I always point out the case of like, and this is ancient history to people, but Dante Culpepper. Oh, Dante Culpepper was a star who could run and throw and do all these things. Burnt out quick. Cam Newton, burnt out quick. On and on and on with these guys. You've got to rein it in if you're going to be a rushing QB. Michael Vick himself. You got to rein it in. And Lamar Jackson's not done that yet. Hasn't figured that out yet. Got another case with probably Justin Fields in the next few years. These guys are awesome for 4 or 5 years. And after that, good luck. And again, we're already seeing it with Lamar Jackson. So this idea that NFL teams would be falling over themselves to give Lamar Jackson like $200 million in guaranteed money because, oh my God, Lamar. No, give some credit to the front offices. They're not looking at Lamar Jackson nor the history of the NFL and saying, that is a great bet for the next 6-7 years. That is what we want to hand over $220 million to. And there might be a team out of 32 that gives in. You know, I think it's starting next Monday. Lamar Jackson can, in effect, go to every NFL team and say, here's what I want. Who wants to pay me? And that team will look at his demands, the same demands that Baltimore probably laughed at for the previous 2 years. Baltimore's been trying to sign him. But Lamar Jackson doesn't appear to want to play ball. He doesn't have an agent, so he doesn't have anybody to play ball for him. His mother, is that right? His mom's like repping him. Come on, dude. We're 26. I don't know if your mom needs to be repping you anymore. Beyond that, an NFL team is going to look at this and say, oh, not only do we have to give you the money, but then we also have to give you your old team, the picks, the 2 first-round picks. Let it also be known that if an NFL team says, you know what, Lamar, let's play ball. Let's get this sucker done. When they make that contract offer, they're telling whoever their current QB is, we're not really interested in you. And why is that a problem? Well, if Baltimore matches and says, you know what, we'll want Lamar Jackson back. Now that he's agreed to this contract, that makes more sense for us. That could happen. That could happen. Well, then that team who made the offer to Lamar Jackson, they're back to their old QB and they say, oh, we didn't really mean it. You know, we really do like you. You really are the future. I draw up that circumstance for Desmond Ridder in Atlanta, and I draw up that circumstance for, say, a Tua Tagovailoa in Miami. If either of those teams, and they've been rumored, oh, yeah, they'd be interested in Lamar Jackson. If either of those 2 teams give the contract to Lamar Jackson, he signs it, and then Baltimore matches it, so Jackson goes back to Baltimore, they're left sitting there saying, oh, yeah, 2 days ago we wanted this guy over you. But now we really want you, okay? Don't be upset with us. We actually loved you all along. That's what a team has to do. But I was blown away, and it's like still going on this morning of like, wow, can you believe that there's not really all these people that are salivating for Lamar Jackson? It's like, what are you watching? Like I saw a report where they said the only red flag that Lamar Jackson has is injuries. That's it. That's the only one? The fact that the last 2 years he's missed a third of the games, that's the only one? Yeah, not bad then. Not bad at all. Oi, oi, oi. Just rough. Ridiculous. We'll see. Lamar Jackson thinks he's worth a lot. I guess he can go to other teams and see if they agree. Baltimore is saying, no, it's crazy. And Baltimore wants the guy. They're just not willing to give him the money of Deshaun Watson. And I keep hearing, the money of Deshaun Watson, the guaranteed money. If you missed it earlier this week, Deshaun Watson is in effect admitting that he is eating up too much of the Cleveland Browns' money, too much of their salary cap, and he is now renegotiating. Because he's like, oh, yeah, they might want to use some of the money they're giving me to be a QB. They might want to use that to protect me with an offensive line or to get me better receivers or to provide me with a better defense. So even that Deshaun Watson contract isn't really what we thought it was. But again, I just say Lamar Jackson, he's fine. He's a good quarterback. But I'm sorry, nobody's going to give you $200 million with the style of game that you play for like 6-7 years. That's ludicrous. And if any team does, they're idiots, honestly. And maybe a team does. I'll hate it, just like I hated the Cleveland deal. Just like the Cleveland deal looks worse and worse by the day with the Browns. So you can go out and do the Lamar Jackson dance, but I don't think it's going to end up very well. Moving along to our main course for today. We're hoping to talk a little golf. That's right. You didn't see golf coming as the main course. The reason I want to talk golf is A, we haven't done it. B, we're getting closer to like the thick of the golf season. What are we, like a month away from the Masters? But beyond that, this weekend is what they term the fifth major. The fifth major. So you've got, what do you got? The championship at the end. You got the British Open, the Masters, the U.S. Open. So all that's going on. This is the fifth, the Players' Championship is what they call it. It's taking place down in Orlando. So we're hoping to get somebody on to talk a little golf because I know that's a big DFS sport. We do the Tour Junkie show right here on BSN. Want to remind you, if you're looking for golf advice, for those of you out there that wager, maybe you play DFS, maybe you're even in some PGA fantasy leagues, by all means, hit us up in the on-demand part of the BSN app and the BSN website. And you can get that. You get access to it for $2.99 a month. We got all of our golf coverage up there. I think the boys are even headed to TPC Sawgrass for this weekend. So that should be a lot of fun. So we'll hope to talk a little bit of golf. Additionally, in our side dishes, loads of baseball. We will continue with our rundown of all things third base this week. Going to be talking about some surprises and some letdowns that have occurred last 12 months or so. If you go back 12 months ago, and I always find this worth looking at, is, okay, we thought this 12 months ago, and then what actually happened? Well, now we think this today. That is because every baseball season and every sport, we overrate, we underrate, guys disappoint, guys get hurt, guys come out of nowhere. So what we do at each position, every time we talk about it, this week's third base, talk about the guys who surprised last season. Same time, the guys who let you down last season. And accordingly, most of them pay the price in ADP. If you were a guy going number 10 last year and you're disappointed, you're probably going 18. If you were a guy who was going 32 last year and you were surprised, you're leaping into the top 15. That's how it works. So which of these surprises and letdowns are actually sticky? Which ones are going to be with us in 2023? We're going to talk about that. Continue our rundown of the National League East. We got you started earlier in the week by taking a look at some of the odds that are available for the preseason. Today, we'll take a look at some offseason storylines from Miami, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Washington, and the New York Mets. It's a very competitive division, so a fun one to talk about. Also, we've got more football for you. Yesterday was the deadline for the franchise tag. I will tell you this, the New York Giants had a perfect franchise tag day. I don't know if it was perfect for their players, one most notably, but the franchise, it couldn't have been better for the New York Giants. So we'll talk about that. We're still wondering about certain QB situations. who's in, who's out. I will say also in the NFL, and I'd like to hit this maybe in hour 3. If you're a running back in the NFL and you didn't understand how you're valued in this league and what the powers that be think of you in this league, yesterday may have been your alarm clock, maybe. And I broached this topic a bit on Tuesday's show, talking about the fact that if you are franchise tagged as a tight end in the NFL, that is more money than if you are franchise tagged as a running back. Now, again, that may be a newsflash for some running backs in the NFL. The fact that Evan Ingram now, who's like nothing special at tight end, he's just a guy, is making $11 million. And that Saquon Barkley is making $10 million. Or Josh Jacobs is making $10 million. Josh Jacobs had over 2,000 total yards last season. He led the NFL in rushing. Besides the franchise tag, $10 million. Running backs starting to figure it out. If they hadn't before, starting to figure out. So yesterday's not a really good day for running backs, and I got some more takes on that as we proceed. We've got the lunch hunch for you. We'll try to sneak a random reference as well. All that coming your way here on Lunch Money. Moving to our bet du jour. Gonna hit you with some NCAA basketball. Look at that. I'm hitting you with golf, hitting you with college hoops. We're about a week away from the madness beginning. And I guess it'll actually start in less than a week, because next Tuesday and Wednesday, they will have those opening 4, I think is what they call it, in Dayton, Ohio. So that'll be Tuesday night and Wednesday night. The actual tournament will begin next Thursday. This week, we've got all the big conference tournaments, which, do they mean something? Yeah, they do for the teams that are trying to win their way in. For instance, my bet du jour tonight deals with one of those teams trying to win their way in. North Carolina. They will have their first game in the ACC tournament later tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern. They're up against Boston College. I know many of you maybe have not followed this story. Now, we talk college hoops here on the show every Friday, and we'll continue that and beyond through March Madness. But here's the story with North Carolina. Last year, they make or was it 2 years ago, they make the championship game. Maybe it was last season. Make the championship game. Kind of a surprise. They hadn't had really a good year. It was Hubert Davis as the head coach. This year, they bring like everybody back, and they are the number 1 team in the country going into the season. Nobody was surprised by that. North Carolina is always up there. They're a blue blood. All their guys coming back. They made the Final Four last year, so no surprise. Number 1 team in the preseason. They have performed horribly this year. They are on the precipice of being the first ever team to start the year at number 1 and then fail to make the tournament. Tonight, they're up against Boston College. This is an absolute must win. If North Carolina loses this game, sayonara. They probably need to win 2 games. 1 would really help, but they probably need to win 2. They're up against Boston College. Now, BC played last night. They were up against Louisville. Louisville's a joke this year, one of the worst teams in college basketball. So BC gets that win. If you look at the ACC this year, North Carolina, I think, finished 7th, and Boston College finished 10th. North Carolina did beat BC earlier this year by 8 points. My bet du jour is actually going to be to take the underdog Boston College Eagles against the spread. They are an 11.5-point dog against the Tar Heels. I think North Carolina wins this game because they have to. Boston College, the only way they're making the tournament is if they win the ACC tournament. And that ain't going to happen. But North Carolina, they know, hey, we get a couple of wins here, we're probably in. So it's a must-win game for them. So they are favored by 11.5. And I dug a bit more into this just to give you some background. I told you UNC won by 8 earlier this year. North Carolina is 4-6 in their last 10 games. I think almost all those are against ACC competition. If you take those 10 games, they are +8 in differential. So, that in effect, they could have gone 2-8 or 8-2. Like, they're always in tight games in effect. And not every one of those 10 games was tight, but a majority were. And this kind of goes to me talking about the spread. This is why I like Boston College as an 11.5-point dog. If you look at BC has won 4 of their last 5. Their scoring differential is +33. So that's more impressive. Finally, the Tar Heels. Here are their last 8 victories and the scoring differential. Remember, our spread tonight's 11.5. They've won by 11. They've won by 8, by 4, by 20, by 4, by 11, and by 8. They're always finishing up in like this victory of 4 to 10 points. So tonight, to give them 11.5 points there as the spread, not going to do it. So I like North Carolina to win this game, but that number is too big, 11.5 against Boston College. So I'm going to take BC against that spread or with that spread as the 11.5 point dog, minus 110 on that number. Dessert for today, I think it's fair to say that maybe not anything, but you can find mostly anything and mostly everything at Walmart, right? Unless you're looking for like really high price stuff. But if you just need a pan, or you need a shirt, or you need a spark plug, or you need a frozen pizza, or you need makeup, or you need shoes, or you need St. Patrick's Day gifts, greeting cards, plants, car tires, candy bars, vegetables, chips, cleaning supplies, Prilosec, and whatever you need, Walmart has it. Well, they have another thing I didn't know they had. You got another thing. They have pre-dinosaur species that we thought disappeared from Earth like 70 years ago. They do. I'll tell you about it later today. Coming up in the dessert. Finally, we have our drink of the day. Of course, my buddy Ray Flowers is not here, so it's up to me to give you something. Now, usually, Ray and I, when we have a drink that we can actually showcase and talk about, we usually pull something from like a small-time brewer, a micro brew, as they're sometimes termed. Not today. Not today. We're going with one of the mega brewers, Molson Coors. They're pretty mega, right? My wife picked these up, and I gotta say, I tried one, and they're so. Blue Moon. I think everybody's had a Blue Moon. Well, now they have a Light Sky Blue Moon. This is in effect a Blue Moon Light, but they kind of put some creativity in it, called it a Light Sky. 95 calories, 3.6 carbs. Ladies love this kind of stuff, right? It's like your Mick Ultra. I don't mind Blue Moon on the whole. I don't mind it. But I will say this light stuff didn't do it for me. It's like, I want a Blue Moon. I want to rip. This was not as thick as a regular Blue Moon. And Blue Moon's not all that thick, but it's kind of got that very cloudy look. This doesn't have that. It tastes about the same, but there was just something missing. And I have said this before on the show. These cans, these fitness cans, as I call them, I don't like drinking beer out of these things at all. Now, they're 12 ounces, just like a regular beer. But when and this is just a mental block for me. This is just me. When I get a beer in a can like this, my brain tells me this is an energy drink. My brain tells me to slam this thing. My brain says, oh, that's a seltzer. But it's not. This is a beer. This is a real beer. But I hate when beers, and I get it. It's part of the marketing. Oh, you want to be thin? Well, then drink a 95-calorie beer that comes in a thin can. Look, this beer is so thinning, it even keeps the can thin. That's what they're telling us. But I don't like this. I don't like this. Not in these cans. I would feel differently. Guarantee you, I'd feel differently. That's totally unfair to the beer, what I'm going to say. But I would feel differently about this beer if it came in a regular size can. I would say, yeah, still not a huge fan of it, but at least it's a beer. Now, when I say, I'm not a huge fan of it, and it comes in like this, twig of a can. So, I don't know. Change the beer packaging, and maybe I'm more into it. But that is my drink of the day. The Light Sky, not terrible by any stretch. In a pinch, it'll work. But even if I just want a light beer, I don't know if I'm going to Light Sky. I will say that is a very, Woo, light sky. It even looks very light. So in a way, the marketing has done a great job because it's an attractive can, but just the wrong size can for yours truly. Okay, that is our drink of the day, and that takes care of our lunch menu for the day. We're just getting up and rolling here on this edition of Lunch Money. Kyle Elfrink hanging out with you until 3 o'clock. See, the chat room is already up and rolling. Chris is saying that Ray's drink of choice today is NyQuil. He might be right, Chris. I think he's probably pounding a lot of NyQuil as he tries to make it through his Wednesday. Tomorrow, Ray is going to be with me because he's got to be here. It's a special. Can't bail on, bailing on lunch money is fine, but you can't bail on a special. Tomorrow, we've got a special event planned for all you BSN listeners. It's going to be fun. We'll take a break from the huge, if you will, and we'll hit you with something fresh, something a bit different, which I'm going to tell you about, as well as getting to some baseball. Spring tidbits, all that good stuff. Coming up next, Kyle Elfrink with you on Lunch Money right here on the Bettor Sports Network.
Lunch Money with Kyle and Ray. Weekdays at noon Eastern, presented by FantasyGuru.com.
We're talking catchers. And Ray, as we jump into this position, traditionally, this has been a position that you kind of say, well, there's like 2-3 guys and the rest is just junk. And gosh, I'm in a 2-catcher league. How in the hell am I going to fill 2 spots, in this 12-man league? And, oh, it's such a struggle after the 8th catcher. Like, fair to say it's different now? I mean, I know it's not great, but it feels like the best catcher pool I've seen in a while, like at least a half decade in terms of, wow, we've got some hitters, we've got guys, and I know they're not exclusively catchers, and the DH is helping, certainly, but it looks like we're going, 10, 12 deep at least of feeling good about catchers, I think.
I tier the players at positions because I think that's a really good way to look at them. And when you tier players, you're basically putting guys that are likely to produce similar levels of production in the same tier. One guy might be batting average, one guy might be home runs, that kind of a thing, but basically the same end result value-wise. I have 2 guys on the elite tier. I then have 9 guys or 8 guys on the next tier. And then I go all the way to 22 on the third tier, which basically almost gets us to that, 2 catchers in the 24, 12-team league kind of thing. So I agree with you. And I think that even if you look beyond that, there's some names that are outside my top 20 that I could easily see being top 15 catchers this year. So yeah, it's not wow, but it's good overall. We got some young guys coming in that are dynamic players to help out some of the older guys that are still hanging on. It's better than it has been. I agree with you.
It's actually very young, Ray. And that, I mean, you look at Varsho, Rauschman, William Contreras, Kirk, Melendez, Cal Riley's semi-young, but Hebert Ruiz. And there's still other guys coming up that are in the minors right now. That's, we used to always say all these young catchers, just catch, don't worry about hitting. These are guys are coming up with some skill sets as well.
Yeah, and the game is different now, right? Back in the day, you were an old dude that had no athleticism. You were good at blocking balls, and we hoped you'd pop 15 home runs, right? That was kind of the MO. Now it's different. Now we get more athletic guys. It's not that, you have to be some dumpy, slow guy catching. You can be an athletic player that can play other positions, as you noted. So I think the youngsters are bringing more athleticism, kind of like the tight end position in football, right? It's like there is more athleticism at the tight end spot than there was 25 years ago. I think it's the same way at the catcher spot.
Make bets and follow your fantasy team while you buy, sell, and trade collectibles in real time. Only on Bettor Sports Network. Lunch Money, presented by FantasyGuru.com on Bettor Sports Network.
Now back to Kyle Elfrink.
Great to have you with us on this Wednesday. Tomorrow, there is no Lunch Money. What? Don't worry. I'll still be here. Ray should be back, I think, too. Tomorrow, coming up here at 12 o'clock Eastern, we have a special presentation because nobody enjoys the Oscars as much as yours truly. Actually, that's a total farce. The movies have lost me. I've talked about this before. I will probably have the Oscars on for about 5 minutes on Sunday night, but I know a lot of you out there in America at large totally into the Oscars. The 95th Academy Awards is coming up on Sunday night. Now, we here at Bettor Sports Network are celebrating it in a couple of ways. First off, tomorrow at 12 Eastern, we are going to have something called Hollywood Highlights. This will be me and Ray Flowers hanging out with some other personalities from right here at BSN. And we will be talking not about this year's movies, because honestly, who went to any of the Oscar movies this year? I didn't. So I'm guessing you didn't either. So instead of like talking about boring movies of 2023 that like 90% of us haven't seen, what we're going to do tomorrow for a couple of hours is we're going to talk about the greats. We're not going to waste our time with 22. We're talk about the greats. So we've got certain movie categories. I think I am in charge of the top 5 James Bond movies of all time. And honestly, it wasn't very tough to put that list together. There's only about, as a long-time Bond aficionado, there's only about 12 to 14 that I believe warrant consideration, even though I love the series and I know it backwards and forwards. There's only about 12 to 14 that you can say, oh, that's one of the best. So that wasn't too tough. So I'll do a top 5 there. I think Ray, and maybe this is why he's taken some time off, he's trying to put together a top 5 movies featuring animals. I think our buddy Edward Rouse is going to jump in with the top 5 Quentin Tarantino movies of all time. We're going to talk sequels. We're going to talk comic book movies. We've got all-time speeches. Josh Winchester, our producer, is giving his take on the top 5 Disney animated flicks. So it should be fun tomorrow. That's going to be 12 to 2. So that is one thing that we are doing in honor of the Academy Awards. The other thing we are doing is the Bettor cast of the Academy Awards. What is the Bettor cast? Well, where you been for the last 2 days? We've been telling you about the Bettor cast. Coming up on Sunday night, 8 o'clock Eastern, I think is going to be our start time on this one. We invite you to jump into the app for a chance to win prizes. How do you win prizes? Well, you can sit there on the app, and we'll have some questions for you. Things about the Oscars, things about the event that you are watching. So in effect, the Bettor cast allows you to win based off your knowledge, kind of your expertise. Trivia's on there. And it depends on the event we're doing each night. Like tonight on the Bettor cast, we've got the Dallas Mavericks, New Orleans Pelicans game. And again, it's going to be trivia and kind of prediction stuff, answering questions. You earn points. And again, you can win money to the Bettor Sports Shop. We're doing the same thing with the Oscars on Sunday night. And last night, I know we did a college hoops game, one of the conference championships, same thing on Monday. And we'll get to do this with college, basketball March Madness and all of that next week. So it's something pretty well every night that we've got for you with the Bettor cast. I know on Saturday, we got one of the XFL games. So if you're into these sports and you're watching them anyway, what we're now providing here at BSN is the chance to turn your sitting on your butt into winnings. Have some fun. Get a part of the community. And that is only with the app. Our regular programming, I think, is still going to be on the website. So you can hunt that down over at bettorsports.com. But did want to point out the Bettor cast. It's going on tonight, as noted, Pelicans and Mavericks. So that's something you're going to want to check out. And then Sunday night for the Oscars. And then tomorrow, we've got our Hollywood Highlights special for you. Okay, let's get back into the sports world, back into getting you set here on Lunch Money. Before we get to our third baseman and kind of pick up that conversation again, if you caught yesterday's show, I gave I would call it a lukewarm endorsement of Alex Bregman. Is that fair? Lukewarm? Yeah, he's not bad, but I don't think he's getting up to great anymore. He's a fine player. I think Alex Bregman is good for home runs and ribbies. Don't know about the other things so much. So it was lukewarm. Well, Mr. Bregman immediately went out into the Grapefruit League yesterday and tore the cover off the ball after he heard me with that stance. 3 for 3 with a couple of doubles. So just want to let you know, I'm not one of these dudes who sits on here and bloviates and gives opinions. And then if something comes back at them, they ignore it. I'm not one of those guys. Full credit to Bregman. Now, again, it means nothing. It's spring training. But he did go 3 for 3 with a couple of doubles. I say all that as we lead in to taking a look back at our surprises at third base a year ago, because not all of these guys, at least in my opinion, will continue their trajectory of 2022 and carry it over to 2023. Yes, let's talk about the guys who surprised at third base, starting with a man who a season ago was not in the top 10 and was not even in the top 20. He went 21st at third base. Part of the reason everybody was out on this guy is he was headed to Seattle. Well, Eugenio Suarez had no problem with Seattle. The home runs were back. The production was back. So Eugenio Suarez certainly succeeded in beating the estimations. Here's the thing with Suarez, though. Even now, even after last season, you're only getting home runs. And honestly, I don't know if you're still going to get those in Seattle. So Suarez had a fine season, but let's understand what makes a fine season. The home runs were great. He rebounded. Cincinnati was bad in 2021, so he goes to Seattle. And last season, 31 homers. You love that. 87 RBIs. That's good. 236 average. Not so good. 0 stolen bases. Not good at all. 76 runs. Blah. We're looking at a guy who has got to hit 30 homers to pay off. He's got to. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Eugenio Suarez has got to get the 30 home runs. Is he a good bet for that? His career says yes. But honestly, we're getting up there in age with Suarez, and the strikeouts are still an issue. He led the American League in strikeouts last year with 196. So I look at Suarez, and it's still too much of a danger zone. And right now, if you hunt down, let me get the latest numbers here. He is the 11th third baseman off the board. Not for me. Not for me. I'd rather take a shot on the guy going right after him, Matt Chapman, who's got the same profile, but I believe is in a better ballpark, and I believe is in a better lineup. So I like Matt Chapman there. There is an argument to be made that if you're looking at Suarez, you might as well just wait and take a shot on a Ryan McMahon or take a shot on a Cabrian Hayes, take a shot on Anthony Rendon. Like, to me, seeing Suarez go as the 11th third baseman off the board, not something I'm digging for this season. And yeah, he can hit home runs, but I would almost sit here and I guess I can't go 5 for 5 because you can't have fewer than 0 stolen bases. But in those other 4 categories, homers, ribbies, runs, average, I'd be willing to say at least 3 of those 4 go down with Eugenio Suarez. So last season, he paid off 30 homers from the 21st third baseman off the board. And he may still get home runs, but I just think the overall picture of Suarez, nothing I really want to reach for. Let's go to a guy who last season was barely inside the top 30 at third base. That is Josh Rojas of the Arizona Diamondbacks. The reason Rojas was falling last year or wasn't really considered an upper-end third baseman is A, there hadn't really been that year, and B, we weren't certain he'd have that job at Arizona. Overall, he played well last season. His value was mostly driven, almost exclusively, by stolen bases. And that's a little bit of a danger spot with Josh Rojas because before last season, I don't think he was considered a guy that, hey, man, if you get Josh Rojas, you're going to get 20 stolen bases. But lo and behold, when it was all done, he had 23 stolen bases. Now, he only had 9 home runs. He played 125 games. He got 500 plate appearances. 510 actually was the number. And everything's just okay outside of the steals. So, the steals, we love them. We like the steals. We want the steals. It's probably a decent bet for high teens, low 20s. But is there more here than just that for Josh Rojas? He's average across the board. And right now you can get him as a third base 2. Last year he was more like a third base 3. He was barely inside the top 30. He is inside the top 20 this year, which is a fine landing spot for him. If he is somebody on your bench, I love that idea. I'm not particularly keen on the idea of him as a corner infielder. I think there are a lot of other options around his spot on the board that I'd prefer. But again, for a roto league where you're scoring and stolen bases, and that's one of your 5 categories, Rojas is fine, but he doesn't profile as a guy who's got more than 25 steals. And even with more games played, I don't know if that's the case. We might want to remind you, too, Evan Longoria. Yeah, I know it's the ghost of Evan Longoria, but still, Evan Longoria is with the Diamondbacks now. So that could eat a bit into Rojas's playing time going into 2023. Our next surprise from last season, will it carry over to this season? Let's go to Philadelphia. Alec Boehm, the young rookie. Last season, I could not believe this. I had to double check my numbers. Going into the season, Alec Boehm was the 33rd third baseman according to ADP. 33rd. And I get it. Boehm came up as a prospect, and it wasn't lights out from the get-go. But, man, going into last year, I'm surprised everybody was that out on Alec Boehm. And I guess they looked smart for about 2.5 months because he was not that good with the bat. But he, like so many of the other Phillies, came alive. Like the last 90 or so games, Alec Boehm looked like a top 12 third baseman. And I still look at him and his age and the confidence he garnered last season. Remember, give this guy credit. At the beginning of last year, he was getting booed by the Philadelphia fans. Now, we know the stories about Philadelphia. Once they start booing, they don't stop booing. Okay. Well, lo and behold, Alec Boehm actually had them cheering by the end of the season. And again, the big knock on him, he couldn't play defense. And he's not that great of a defender, despite what looks to be a very exciting play there on the photo. He's not that great of a defender, but he got better. He improved. He kind of showed that Philadelphia backbone, that blue-collar work ethic that everybody could celebrate. Don't know if it's true, but it sounds good. And it worked for Boehm. He started to get hits. He started to have production. This year, if you look at Alec Boehm, he is much higher up the chart, 14th. I like that spot for him. I think what we saw down the stretch from Boehm is something we can get, which is a decent amount of homers, some good ribbies, a fine average. I don't think there is anything of these 5 categories that we all kind of aim for that is elite with Alec Boehm. I talk about Suarez. He's got elite power. Say what you will. I'm kind of down on Suarez, but he's got elite home run potential. Josh Rojas, maybe not elite, but good stolen base potential. Boehm is more just kind of steady as she goes all across all 5 categories. And I think that can continue. Of these 3 guys that we've talked about, surprises of last year, where are they at this year? He's the one I feel most comfortable with. And the price is fine. Like I said, 14th at third base. He's about 180 overall. That puts him in the 15th, 16th round. So, again, I like that with Alec Boehm. Sign me up for that with Alec Boehm. Finally, let's go up to Minnesota. I'm probably saying that and you're still wondering, Minnesota? Gio Urshela's gone. Jose Miranda. Now, Miranda's a bit of a gray area here because he's going to play a lot of first base this year, but he will qualify at third base and first base. Last season, Miranda was the 45th third baseman off the board, and that made total sense. He didn't have a job. He was starting in the minors. We hadn't seen Jose Miranda. Well, he got called up, I think it was June with the Twins, and his first 3 weeks were bad. Like, he got called up and there was nothing. And then a lot like Boehm, he took off with the bat. And he showed some oomph and some production with the bat. And Miranda, in effect, solidified his job in the lineup and solidified his job on the defense. Like I said, he's mainly going to be a first baseman this year. Last season, he was an afterthought on draft day. I mean, maybe if you were in a deep AL-only league, you were thinking about a Miranda. Now, where is he at this year? He is actually top 10, which, to me, that says more about third base than maybe it says about Miranda. And this is something we've talked about all week. Yesterday we spent a lot of time on Alex Bregman. And I talked about how Alex Bregman is not in that top 6. We got like a superstar top 6. To me, Bregman is separate. And then after Bregman, we've got like 6, 7 dudes who I don't think are as good as Bregman. To me, they're in their own level. It's like a tier 1 of the greats. It's tier 2, including Bregman. And then tier 3 includes Miranda and these other guys. Guys like Max Muncy, guys like Suarez, guys like Chapman, guys like Hayes. That's what tier 3 is for me. So Miranda's in that level. If you look at last season with Miranda, again, this is a lot like Suarez. He's a lot younger, which is a bonus. But Jose Miranda's not going to get you any steals. Okay, it's not going to happen. So you're not getting anything on that front. You do get dual positional eligibility with Jose Miranda. I think you also get a guy who could hit like 280. He was around 270 last season. And if he's hitting 280 with like, 22 to 25 homers, that would probably make him a third base 1. Because you'd have to think with a 280 average, with the 24 home runs, you got a guy on Minnesota probably driving in close to 80. So I think that Miranda is a good call. It's not my favorite call as my starting third baseman. The more and more I think about this position, and I'm not usually one who drafts this way, it's kind of like I almost feel the need to get one of those top 7 third basemen to be my guy, because I'm not particularly enamored with the Mirandas of the world or the Muncies of the world, even the Bohms of the world. To me, they're more like, if they're my starting third baseman, I probably struck too late. So I like Miranda, and I think there's some good pop and ribby potential. The average, it's not Eugenio Suarez on the average. Suarez may hit 225 in Seattle. Miranda, I think you'd bottom out at like 240 and maybe like 245. I think he has just a much better hit tool of putting the ball in play. Last season, he had 91 strikeouts, but that's in 483 plate appearances. Honestly, that's not bad at all in today's baseball. So that's unlike a guy, like Eugenio Suarez, who's striking out 200 times. So feel a little more comfortable with that batting average on Miranda. I like him more than Suarez. He might be a little more comparable to Bohm for me. Bohm's going to cost a lot less than Miranda. So again, it kind of falls into that spot where I don't want to be shopping at third base. Miranda was a surprise last year. Heck, if you picked him up off the waiver wire, you might have had a chance to pick him up twice. There was that initial shot when he got called up by the Twins. And I recall everybody kind of spent some fab on him. This was a pretty good prospect. And like I said, he failed. It was like he hit 180 or something for like the first 3 weeks. And so people probably dropped him. So then it went around that second time. And if you had Miranda in the second half of the season, you got a good player. And I think he's a fine player, just not a guy who is really a target of mine at third base. So again, those are some surprises from last year. The odds of them repeating, we've got Suarez, Rojas, Miranda, and Bohm. If I were to rank them, and again, this is throwing in repeatability, this is throwing in cost, and this is throwing in confidence of either steady growth or continual growth, I would rank them Bohm, Miranda, Rojas, and Suarez. That would be my ranking on those surprises. Now, coming up a bit later in the show, we will take a look at the other side of the coin. Who were the guys that were going early at third base a season ago? And then they went out and crapped the bed. Are those guys going to come back? Do those guys have a turnaround? We'll discuss that coming up a bit later in the show. But when we return, it's off to the Grapefruit League, off to the Cactus League. Get you up to date on some developments from yesterday, get you set for today's action, maybe run through some statistical intrigue. That's what we have to call it in spring training, right? Oh, it's intriguing. Statistically intriguing. Get you up to date on some spring numbers. Coming your way next. Stay with us. More of Lunch Money right here on BSN.
Moose and Keith. Weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern.
The word genius is there. Bob Glover, it describes him. Bob, so when's the last time that Twitter defeated you? Because I've been defeated by Twitter today.
I'll tell you how Twitter defeated me one time. I had the mistaken impression that the year that Troy Polamalu won the Defensive Player of the Year, it looked like it was going to go to Clay Matthews. Jr. And I tweeted it. And there was a guy on the media bus. He was like, oh, yeah, he's got it. A guy I trust. I won't tell you who it was, but his initials are Mike Garafolo. So I went with it. Got a DM from Rich Eisen, NFL Network. He goes, you sure about that? I go, oh, man. Oh, I just got this wave. Because, like, accuracy to me is really important. So I'm literally on the media bus. We're just getting back from media day. We are slipping and sliding in Dallas. It's snowing. I get off the bus. I open my laptop. I'm hunched over. And I just, like, literally people are passing me. Bob, what's wrong? And it was Palomalu. And Adam Schefter had retweeted me. Trey Wingo had retweeted me. I'm like, oh, I'm dead.
So when it's Palomalu, then how do you handle that? Like, what was the subsequent tweet
I think
afterwards?
I said, got some bad Twitter info. I didn't put Garafalo's name on there. I had to
10 years later, you can out him. I like that. Yeah.
You know, he wouldn't mind that. He knows the stories.
Yeah.
He actually said to me, hey, Bob, I think you might have jumped the gun on that. I was like, oh, crap. There we go.
Campus to Canton on the Bettor Sports Network.
Would Dion bench Shedeur?
I don't think he would.
Like, how bad would it have to be? Because we've seen horrendous quarterback play from this Colorado team for the last, 5 years? JT Shroud, Brandon Lewis, just terrible quarterback play. Like, they were 131st, which is dead last in pass EPA per play. Obviously, it will be better, but how bad does it have to be for him to bench his own son? Like, I'm not sure he will ever either, like, especially with the attitude that he came in with.
If they don't get Rashada, who do they bench him for this year anyway? I don't know that there's another answer on that roster that you go to. They don't really have a guy behind him. So I don't even know if we would know the answer to that until the next year, assuming that, he doesn't declare for the draft, he returns, they bring somebody else that's competent and behind him.
If they're going to do this the Lincoln Riley way, next year would be the class to bring somebody in. Shedeur Sanders is going to be a third-year player. So he's going to play 2023. I don't think he's declaring for the 2024 NFL draft. So he's going to play in 2024 and then declare for the 2025 NFL draft. And let's remember this. He hasn't had a full recruiting cycle at Colorado. He will have that next recruiting cycle. So maybe he could get one of these class of 2024 quarterbacks there to come to Colorado.
However you're invested in sports, from betting to fantasy, collectibles, and more, join our community on Bettor Sports Network. Whether you collect sports memorabilia, fantasy championships, or winning bet slips, talk about it on Bettor Sports Network.
Now back to Kyle Elfring.
So yesterday, I think that when we did the show here on Lunch Money, a couple of guests must have really rubbed off on me on Tuesday. If you caught yesterday's show, the King, Scott Engel, stopped in. We also heard from Justin Finsterman. We were talking some baseball, a little bit of football with Scott, talking basketball with Justin. Now, both those guys are never shy about hiding their love of all things New York. And Scott was wearing a Knicks hat. And Scott's like a big, hard, diehard, all things Mets kind of guy. Well, Justin's kind of the same with all things New York. So I assume that last night when I was sitting in my living room and it was about 9:30. And I'm like, okay, I got some free time tonight. I don't want to watch my St. Louis Blues. They've quit on the season. They're playing Arizona. They got smashed by the Coyotes. So they've really quit on the season. There was nothing else really I needed to watch. I'll get my college basketball fix, and there was no real NBA games that enticed me. So I said, you know what? Let's hit up the old DVR. And so I'm going through the DVR, and I noticed there that there were some 30s for 30, or is it 30 for 30s? I guess it would be, that I hadn't gotten around to. So I said, oh, well, they were buried really low on my queue. So I clicked on the 30 for 30s and said, well, let's see what we got in here. And what we had in there was 4 episodes that I didn't even remember recording. But I guess with the aura of Scott Engel and Justin Finsterman kind of roaming around me, it was the Once Upon a Time in Queens 30 for 30, taking a look at the 86 New York Mets. And I said, I got all 4 parts here. Now, I watched 2 of them. I hope to get to the other 2 tonight. And I am not one of these people that gorges on 30 for 30s. I know some people like watched all, I don't know, 200 of them, whatever it is. Not somebody that gorges on them. I do appreciate them. I enjoy them when they're on and I get a chance to watch them. I get zero issue with them. I think a lot of them always tell me things I didn't know. I've only watched the first 2 episodes, but the Mets, when I was growing up in that era, 84 to 90, to me, I even had this shirt. It had like a green blob on the front, and it said, Mets are pond scum. And that was a very popular refrain growing up in near, I should say, St. Louis, Missouri. If you were a Cardinal fan, the Mets were pond scum. And honestly, talk about truth in advertising. And we all know the story with the 86 Mets. But watching it last night, it was only hardwired, I guess you would say. That yes, indeed, the Mets are pond scum. They're fun pond scum, but they're pond scum. These guys, I don't know. We all the one thing I took away from it, I really appreciated how candid Keith Hernandez was, especially talking about Gary Carter. And of course, Gary has passed away, but I never really known this as such, but it's almost Gary Carter was like this overachieving, hard-playing guy that everybody thought was just a doofus. Like Gary was into the cameras. Gary was into making it look harder than it was. Gary played it up to the fans. And Hernandez was very open about that. And like I said, maybe it's easier when somebody has passed on. And they weren't trashing Gary Carter. I mean, all those guys that say, man, Gary Carter was critical to the success we had. And for those who don't know, he was the catcher for the Mets. They traded with the Expos to bring him in. I think it was in 85 was when he first arrived. They won the World Series in 86. So that was one takeaway I had. Again, I've not finished the entire series. The second takeaway I had from that Once Upon a Time in Queens 30 for 30 is that everything you've heard about Lenny Dykstra is probably true. Probably. I can't recall the last time I was watching a documentary or a pseudo documentary, whatever you want to call it, where they're interviewing a guy and like literally you're hearing him talk and you're seeing him be really jittery and moving around and like this, and you're like, this guy is lit. It looks like it's morning wherever he's at in Florida. It's like Lenny Dykstra is a little edgy. A little sketch. Like Lenny was living up to Lenny, I think, on that. I was like, ooh, I don't recall the last person I ran into that acted like Lenny Dykstra's acting during this interview. It was good. It was entertaining. And hey, it's Lenny Dykstra. You expect it. But there's some good stuff going on there. But anyway, I know I'm late to the game. I think that came out in like 2021. It's like 18 months old. But I've enjoyed it. I love one thing that those 30 on 30s always do, especially the ones of the 80s and 90s. They take you back, and there are these images, moments, like a thing with Shea Stadium that I don't recall ever being in any other old stadium, and it's certainly not in stadiums now. But one thing as a child that you knew, like you could just see this image and you said, you didn't even have to see the ballpark. If you just saw this image, you said, oh, they're at Shea Stadium. They're in New York. Shea Stadium's dugouts always had the wood paneling. The wood paneling in the dugouts. And maybe it wasn't paneling, but knowing that it was the 80s, it probably was paneling in the dugouts. But it was like brown wood. They always had that. And I don't know if that was only on the home team side. Maybe it was on the road team too. But the home team always had the wood paneling with these guys. They don't make dugouts like they used to with the wood paneling. That always screams Shea Stadium. The other thing that always screams Shea Stadium is the sign behind home plate that said, no pepper. Couldn't play pepper at Shea Stadium. We don't get those signs anymore either. There you go. There you go. Okay, hit you with a couple of news and notes from spring camp. Looks like Nolan Gorman, we've talked about him a lot, actually going to be at third base today for the St. Louis Cardinals. Nolan Gorman, usually a second baseman DH kind of guy. Obviously, Nolan Arenado is out. So Nolan Gorman filling in for him while Arenado's at the WBC. And I guess it's a way to get him some work and maybe find a way to get his bat into the lineup. But he's at third base today. Bad news for the Pittsburgh Pirates, although it's not really bad news. I don't think this guy was going to be a part of the major league plans this year anyway. But Tamar Johnson, who's probably their one or two best prospect in that Pirates team. He's a very young guy, shortstop / second baseman kind of player. He's got a hamstring injury, and he's going to be out doing nothing for the next 6 weeks or so. So that's going to really kind of delay. He had an opportunity to get some playing time, go up against the big boys, in camp. That's not going to happen. He will miss time with that hamstring injury. In terms of who's succeeding right now in camp, how about Tristan Casas of the Boston Red Sox? I think he is going to be a guy rising up draft boards over the coming weeks. He is up to 8 hits, 8 runs, 2 homers, and 6 ribbies. Casas is a first baseman, probably locked into an everyday role with Boston. You don't have to worry, I don't feel, about Bobby Dalbec anymore. I think Casas could actually hit around 5th or 6th in this Boston order, especially if he keeps this up. So we can always sit here and say, well, what does spring training mean? Casas probably is your first baseman regardless of what he does in spring. But if he hits like this with the success of this, and again, 8 runs, 2 homers, 6 ribbies, it's good stuff. He moves near the middle of that lineup, and that does make a difference. So when we talk about what does spring mean, and people want to say, oh, it means nothing. And maybe, what is the definition of nothing? Well, that means 0, right? It means nothing. It actually does mean something. Quite often, people make it out to mean too much, but it means something, and here's a perfect case. Guy's going to hit, and the Red Sox, if he's hitting like this, the Red Sox aren't saying, okay, we'll leave him at 8. No, he can move to like 5 in the order. So it does mean something to have success. Does it mean he'll have success in the regular season? It doesn't. But in terms of lineup positioning, that's really important, especially when you're talking about guys who are drafted around 200 in a fantasy draft. That's how you kind of find steals. Guys land in RBI producing spots. They land in the midst of other good hitters around them. They're batting with runners aboard. They're batting with other better hitters behind them. So, yeah, it does make a difference because it may cause the Red Sox. In fact, I would argue it will cause the Red Sox to shift him in the batting lineup, depending on how he performs in spring. So that's a guy to keep an eye on. Casas, a young up-and-comer. We go across the country to Arizona and talk about a guy who used to be an up-and-comer, Joe Adell. Remember him of the LA Angels? 3 years ago, he's like probably one of the top 4 or 5 outfielders in minor league baseball. He got to the big leagues, and the dude has never hit. And unfortunately, he's still not hitting in Arizona. He got a couple of hits yesterday. But even with those 2 hits for Joe Adell, we have a 4 for 22 start to his spring camp. And probably the biggest cause for alarm is we still have a hideous strikeout to walk ratio. Right now, 12 Ks to 2 walks for Joe Adell. And I'll give the Angels some credit here. They keep trying and trying and trying to get something with Joe Adell. And I don't want to say they've just rolled him out there and said, kids, start hitting and start playing. They haven't done that. But they've given him ample opportunity, and it has not happened. And you look at the Angels now, they actually are probably on the other side of the hill in terms of the Joe Adell game, to where it's becoming hard to keep giving him shots. And so this is an important camp for Joe Adell. At this juncture, he's almost got to break camp with the Angels, but it's probably as a bench player. It's probably not as a starter. And again, Joe Adell had that game that profiled with power, speed, even batting average, but right now there's just too much swing or miss. And he also had a game where you could envision, this sounds silly to even say it now, but you could envision a lineup that would have like Adell, Trout, Ohtani, as like a 2-3-4 or a 1-2-3. Like that was kind of the hope, and it's just been a miserable mess. So Couple of hits yesterday, but it hasn't really changed the trend lines for Joe Adell. Another young outfielder, Oscar Colas with the Chicago White Sox. He's trying to win one of the corner outfield jobs. Looking pretty good. 9 for 21 is his start there for the White Sox. And then Grayson Rodriguez of the Orioles, young pitcher. I don't think he's going to break camp with Baltimore, but he was on the hill yesterday. Struck out 4, had a couple of walks in 2 2/3 innings. Pretty good outing for him. That was outing number 2. He will continue to get work in spring, but again, I find it, I don't know if doubtful is the right word, but I think with Grayson Rodriguez, you're probably going to see him start in the minors, maybe up by May. The Orioles will have some injuries. The reason I think it's a safe bet to say Grayson Rodriguez starts in the minors is you look at some of the arms that they do have on that team, and it's like Jordan Lyles and guys like that. They get those guys because they're veteran arms that aren't going to get, starstruck, if you will, by the big leagues. You can use those guys in April. They've been there, done that. You use them for the early season innings. You let Rodriguez get seasoning at AAA, and then it's very easy to move on from those vets to bring in Rodriguez, say, May 20th. And you'll have injuries in the pitching staff. I mean, almost every team, by the time we get to Memorial Day, they've probably lost 1 pitcher, 2 pitchers to the IL. It's almost a guarantee. So guys like Rodriguez, they'll be a phone call away. And I would suspect he's fine to draft, I think, Grayson Rodriguez. But again, just know you probably don't have him on opening day. And if you're fine with that and you're drafting him as your, in a redraft league, as he's your SP4, that's a little rich. Because even if he gets up to the big leagues, is Grayson Rodriguez going to be a guy who consistently is starting every 5 days? I don't know if that's the case. And I can't really see him doing more than like 125 innings this year. So factor all that in. Now, the hype will cause it to occur quickly. The hype on Grayson Rodriguez will cause him to be selected as an SP4. And again, it may fit for you depending on your league and the settings and all of that and what else you have on pitching. If you're in a shallow league and you have to take him as a 4, you're still going to have plenty of opportunities to get good 5s, get a good 6, get a good 7. So you can get away with taking him as a 4. But if you're in a deeper league and you jump the gun on Grayson Rodriguez all the way to an SP4, what are you backfilling with? Maybe not something near as good. So Rodriguez looking good yesterday. I still think he's a bit of a stretch to be ready for opening day. A couple of quick news and notes. Nathan Eovaldi, like everybody with the Rangers, is injured. He's got a side injury. He is still not throwing off a mound. So don't be surprised at all if Nathan Eovaldi begins the year on the IL. His teammate, Jake DeGrom, the hope is that he's facing hitters on Friday. And then the hope is that he's on a spring training mound in an exhibition by the middle of next week. That's the hope. Fingers crossed on that one. Also, Kyle Wright of Atlanta. He is coming back from a shoulder injury. He did have a bullpen session as he tries to get back in form for the Braves. Now, speaking of the Braves, when we return right here on Lunch Money, let's get back into talking about the NL East. We'll go through some offseason storylines and what they mean for you, the fantasy player. Talking Atlanta, the Mets, the Phillies, 3 teams that are trying, the Marlins, who are trying too, and the Nationals, who aren't. We'll hit on all 5 of those teams. Coming up next, it is Lunch Money on the Bettor Sports Network.
Talk about your picks and your fantasy teams on Bettor Sports Network.
The importance of checking out the site that you're playing on. Default rankings of these sites. A lot of times they don't get updated. I know from experience. I used to write default rankings for the NFBKC, the basketball version of the NFBC. I'd write these default rankings in June for the NBA, before the NBA draft, before free agency opened up. And guess what? I was never asked to write an update article or update the default rankings. This happens a lot. Maybe if there's something obvious, it gets updated. Aaron Judge, for some reason, hurts his back. Maybe they make that change. Just maybe. But you don't know that. And that's why it's just so important that you show up to your draft room or you do that pre-draft prep. We're all busy. We know we're about to devote a lot of time to our fantasy baseball drafts. Why not spend the extra 20 to 25 minutes to invest properly in your team, to go and see which of those players are way down default rankings? They're going to be different on all of these sites, and you're going to be looking at them and going, maybe their analysts think a certain player who shouldn't be in the top 100, who should be maybe even not even the top 200, will be in that top 100. You got to check that out. You got to know where you're playing, just like you got to know your format when you sign up for the league. It's just so crucial, and people just skip right over it. You think it's cool to show up to the draft room 3 minutes before the draft. Well, number one, it's not cool because the commissioner's trying to make sure it is organized, especially me, who runs auctions. You can't, it's one thing if someone doesn't show up for the snake draft, oh well, doesn't ruin it for everyone. Auctions, you can't have someone not show up. Auto bidding, auto auctioning, it ruins the sanctity of those drafts here, which is why I always recommend, hey, make it easy on your commissioner. Don't make them send those texts there. It's annoying. You shouldn't have to do that. Don't wait till the last minute and get in there about 20, 25 minutes before so you can just look up and down the entire default rankings list so you can make a queue out of that, Ron. And the reason I keep saying this is because people still show up 2, 3 minutes before the draft, and that's it. In fact, in one of my auctions, people were asking me where certain players were, and I go, did you search their name? No, I just got in. Well, that's no excuse right there. That's your own fault. I mean, you're organized, so you're a hard person to ask here.
You're getting those questions. This is your preschool league, right? People don't know how to search player names.
People freak out. They don't think. That's the problem. Because they show up 2 minutes before the draft. That's why.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, presented by FantasyAlarm.com. Weekdays at 5 Eastern on Bettor Sports Network. Lunch Money, presented by FantasyGuru.com on Bettor Sports Network.
Now back to Kyle Elfring.
Okay, we welcome you back in. Kyle Sands, Ray Flowers, hanging out with you here on Lunch Money. Ray is still fighting it. Must have a mutant bug, if you will, that he's dealing with. So hopefully that gets a bit better as we move through the week. Hoping to have him back tomorrow. Should have him back tomorrow. Certainly Friday. I know he was close today, but we said, Ray, take it easy. Take it easy. Get back to work on that draft guide. Go do work there. Reminder to hit up the draft guide over at FantasyGuru.com. Latest and greatest for all things baseball. Let's see. Shall we do a random reference? I don't mind doing a random reference. We should do a random reference. We like to go over to baseballreference.com pretty well every day on the show. And I love their little frivolities section. A lot of fun things. And one of the links they have is you click it and randomly you get a page from their archives. They got again, I don't even know what the exact number is. It's got to be well into the millions. I mean, there is everything at baseballreference.com. So when I click that frivolities page, let's see what I end up with. A box score. Ooh, wow, this is going to be a stretch. Twins Mariners, April 20th of 1980. 43 years later, we're talking about it on BSN. You think they were thinking about BSN or even the internet back in 1980? Not these guys. This was a very early game of the season, April 20th. Let's see. Twins win it 4-3. This was the 12th game of the season for the Mariners and the Twins. This was at the Kingdome. Check this out. 8,000 fans at the Kingdome. And yeah, the Mariners, I guess they would still a quasi-expansion team by this point. They hadn't won anything, but heck, they were above 500 at this point in the season. Still yanking in 8,000 fans. Don't blame the weather either. It's the Kingdome. 8,000 fans, and they must have had a pitch clock back in 80 because that game only took 2 hours and 19 minutes between these two. Let's see. We had Pete Redfern pitching against Mike Parrott. Anybody out there know a Redfern or a Parrott? They're fun names. Redfern, Parrott. Mike Parrott actually had a complete game here. It's a complete game loss, but a complete game nonetheless. 9 innings. Gave up 8 hits, couple of home runs, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. Not enough, though, as Pete Redfern got the win. Gave up a couple of home runs. Man, the names back then, Mike Cubbage and Roy Smalley. with the home runs for Minnesota. I'm looking at these teams, man. This Twins team is a bunch of nothing. This Mariners team, man, a bunch of nothing too. Like, listen to this. I'm going to run through these 1 through 9s. And even if you're a baseball diehard, you would expect to see somebody's name that you recognize. Check this out. Here's your starting 9 for Minnesota. You might recognize 1 or 2 of these names. Hoskin Powell. No idea who Hoskin Powell is. Rob Wilfong. Now, Roy Smalley I've heard of. And Kenny Landreau. I've heard of him. Butch Weiniger. Rick Sofeld. Not Schofield. Sofeld. Glenn Adams. Mike Cubbage. And John Castino. Huh? Can we not get a Rod Carew? I guess he was with the Angels by then. Mariners starting 9. Larry Milbourne, Rod Craig, Dan Meyer, Bruce Bochy? Is that the same Bruce Bochy? No, it's not. I think it's Bochy. This is Bruce Bochy, not Bruce Bochy. So we can't even win that one. Willie Horton, who I've heard of, Joe Simpson, Bill Stein, Bob Stinson, and Jim Anderson. Wow. I pride myself on at least recognizing old major league names. I just ran through 18 of them there from this game on April 20th of 1980. I think I recognized 3. That's it. Woo, that's rough. They were wondering in our chat room how many pitches, because I mentioned that game was 2 hours and 19 minutes. They did not keep pitch counts back here. So I don't have, at least on this historic box score, a number of pitch counts. I can tell you this, that there were 74 batters that came to the plate. Let's say on average, what is it, a little over 4? Now, I don't know what the game was 40 years ago, but let's give them, right now I think it's a little over 4 is maybe the pitches you see, or maybe it's right around 4. So if we give 4 for those, 74 batters, you're talking almost 300 pitches. So 2 hours and 19 minutes in that game. 8 hits for both sides, had an error from both sides, and the Twins won it 4-3. That is a truly random reference here on the show. You don't get much more random than running through those names and those teams. Let's bring it back to the present day, shall we? Come on, Kyle. Let's bring it back to 2023. Come on. We don't need to worry about 43 years ago. Okay, so we bring it back to 2023. All this week, we are talking things that deal with the National League East. Earlier in the week, we went through a lot of the odds. Very competitive division. But as I noted yesterday, if there's one thing you can count on, it's that the Miami Marlins are going to finish 4th, right? That's guaranteed. Today, we're going to take a look at some of the offseason storylines for these 5 teams. And I guess the best place to start would have to be with the team that, I guess, won the offseason to an extent. Let's start with the New York Mets, where they are doing what every single fan base in baseball is wanting them to do. The New York Mets are going for the gold. They're going for the title. That's what they're doing. And that's what we all want, right? We all wish we had an owner like Steve Cohen, right? And so the Mets say, you know what? We're going for it. And this was expected, say, 2 years ago when Steve Cohen officially took over. He's going to spend money, and he has. He's spending money like crazy. You get Max Scherzer, and you one-up that with Justin Verlander. You go out and you ink Carlos Correa. Now, it didn't work out, but the Mets are going for it. They're paying Edwin Diaz, a closer. They're paying Edwin Diaz over $100 million. They brought back Brandon Nimmo. They're going for the gold. And I don't know if it ends up well for the Mets. I can assure you they will never be as circus act worthy as the 86 Mets that I was talking about earlier. But this is a team that's built to win now. And that's what you want. You want a team that is built to win now. And you want to go into a season excited to win now, to get those victories. And the Mets have that. I think at the very least, if this team is anything, I mean, if they miss the playoffs, hell to pay. You know, Buck Showalter may be out of a job if this team misses the playoffs. So, hey, the Mets are going for it. We all wish we could say that about our team. Some of us can, some of us can't. I don't know if anybody's ready to go for it like the Mets. Like, I still feel if they get to like July, they need a pitcher, they'll make a trade, make a big trade, make a big splash. They'll go out and get those guys. And there's probably more signings to come. You know, we talk about the offseason, next offseason. And of course, everybody's after Shohei Ohtani. Don't kid yourself. The Mets are going to be in on that too. That's totally be in on that. Moving to our next offseason storyline in the National League East, we go to the Washington Nationals. Other side of the coin here. Perfect flip-flop here of the Nationals and the Mets. And you can't complain too much if you're the Nats because you got your title, right? You got your title a few years ago. They went for it a few years ago, and you knew this was going to happen when Anthony Rendon left and Max Scherzer left and Bryce Harper left. You knew the rebuild was here. What you would have liked to occur, though, is that the rebuild could somehow find a way to hold on to Juan Soto. Somehow could find a way to hold on to him. It didn't. And I still think that is a huge indictment of the Washington Nationals. And now this is the team you're left with, the one you're looking at right there. A bunch of like 8-year-olds. There's your Washington National team. You see that that emblem there? The Nationals Youth Baseball Academy. All these guys in that photo, they'll probably be up with the Nats at some point this year. I think so. I'm not kidding. You think I'm joking, but a few of those guys already have professional contracts, I bet. I mean, this team's just not good. Lane Thomas, Corey Dickerson, Jeimer Candelario, Victor Robles, Luis Garcia, Patrick Corbin, Paulo Espino, Trevor Williams, Carl Edwards Jr. I mean, all these guys who have literally been on every other team in baseball are now showing up with the Nationals. And the guys who've only been Nationals, they're this age. CJ Abrams, the shortstop, he is somewhere in that photo. I guarantee you. Got to be sitting there somewhere, CJ Abrams, as he comes up. Which is bad. And you're right, freaky fat guy. The Nationals kind of sound like the 1980 Minnesota Twins. Not too far off. They're rebuilding. God love them. It's going to be rough. If you are a National season ticket holder this year, woo! There's never been a better argument to tax the rich than if you're a person with the Nationals season tickets. You got too much money then, right? It's official. How do you know you're rich? If you have enough money to buy season tickets to the Nationals. That's it. That's the standard I am now invoking. I don't need to see income. I don't need to see charitable deductions. I don't know. It's very simple. You get taxed at a different rate if you have enough money to buy National season tickets. There it is. I mean, give it to a charity. Hell, give it to the Nationals Youth Academy. Give it to them. Moving on to hopefully better things. Storyline with Philadelphia from the offseason. It's like Mets light. I don't think Philadelphia gets as much credit as they should. They finished second. They finish in a spot nobody really thought they'd finish in. They overachieve. And they go out and add this guy. Now, this guy, you can see on this photo, looks like Eddie Haskell. Okay? Like Trey Turner. Like, this guy's the best dude in fantasy baseball? Like, let's just cut the frame out of it and look at Trey Turner. Does that guy look like, oh, yeah, he's best dude in fantasy? Like, you put him and stand amongst Julio Rodriguez or Ronald Acuna or Juan Soto, Jose Ramirez, Aaron Judge. You're going to say, no, all these guys, they look like dinosaurs and monsters and Frankensteins. It's actually this dude, Eddie Haskell, who's your top fantasy player. But I'm not here to tell you it's not Trey Turner. And again, for the Phillies, storyline here is not settling for second. it wasn't just Trey Turner. It was Taijuan Walker. It was Giovanni Soto or Gregory Soto. It was Matt Strahm. It was Craig Kimbrell. Like, even last season, the Phillies had issues in their bullpen. They made that huge run in October, and every game they had to throw the same 3 dudes over, and over again because they didn't have depth. So they get Soto, they get Kimbrell, and they get Strahm. We'll see how it works. I don't think you would ever guarantee anything, especially with bullpens. But again, it's like Mets light. They're trying to win. It started with Harper. It continued with Castellanos and Schwarber. And, they gave Aaron Nola a little more money. Now, I don't think they're going to have any money for Rhys Hoskins. I think he's moving on. But they've gone out and they've kept spending. Real Muto got a big contract. So they're trying. They're not settling for that overachieving year. They're like, okay, we got there. We tasted it. Let's take it. Let's do that. Don't know if they're a good bet to do it. Right now, they're the 3rd pick out of the NL East. But again, they're trying. Moving along to Miami, the Marlins. What's the offseason storyline there? It's simple. Offseason storyline for the Fish, amping the offense, kicking this thing into gear. I looked at the numbers. Those guys right there, standing in the dugout, looking at the field, there was a lot of that last year with Miami. Why? Look at the numbers. These are hideous. The Marlins, 15th in runs scored, 14th in home runs. This is out of 15 National League teams, by the way. 15th in runs, 14th in homers, 15th in walks, 13th in average, 14th in on-base percentage, 15th in slugging, 14th in OPS. That's Miami. So, yeah, you need to go out and get Luis Arraez. Hell, you need to go out and get Gene Segura. You might even need to go out and get Yuri Gurriel. And are any of these guys going to change the overall picture? Not by themselves. But you put them together and maybe you get Soler crushing. Maybe you figure that out. Maybe Chisholm can stay healthy. But the whole key this offseason is got to get more offense. And you look at their pitching staff. Even after the trade of Pablo Lopez, they still got pitching. Pitching's fleeting. Pitching is injury prone, and they'll have to show depth. They've got a good rotation, and they probably got a good 6 or 7 starting pitchers they can turn to. But these guys right here, they're not watching the Marlins pitching last year. They're trying to watch this hit. They're trying to put up with this hitting. Look at those guys. They look like they've given up. Probably just had the first inning conclude, and they're like, ugh, gonna be one of those nights tonight. Whew. I couldn't believe those numbers. Like, if you think the worst offense in the National League, would you immediately think Miami? I don't think you would. But the numbers bear it out. I mean, no slugging, no average, no runs. They were horrendous. And don't blame it on the ballpark, okay? There's a lot more going on than just the ballpark. What about the other 81 games that weren't in that ballpark? Because they didn't score there either. Finally, we go to Atlanta. Atlanta's kind of different than the Miami Marlins. Now, they got a lot of pitching like Miami, but when I look at the offseason storyline for Atlanta, it's putting the onus on this guy. Who is that guy? That's Brian Snitker, the manager of the Atlanta Braves. And the man has so much hitting that the storyline is, what do we do with all this hitting? How do we place all this hitting? They have a load of it. They got a new catcher in Sean Murphy. Guess what? They've got another top 12 catcher in Travis d'Arnaud. So like most teams in baseball don't have one catcher. The Braves have 2. They got Matt Olson at first. They got Ozzie Albies at second. They lose Dansby Swanson, but they bring in a prospect, Vaughn Grissom, who handled himself last year. You got Austin Riley at third. You have Orlando Arcia backing all these guys up. You got Ozuna, Rosario, Harris, Acuna. Hell, even throw in Sam Hilliard into that list. They have got a load of options when it comes offensively for the Atlanta Braves. The issue is going to be, where do you put all these guys? Because even if you lead off Ronald Acuna, and you might think, okay, that's easy, put Ronald Acuna number 1. It isn't. There's some people that say Michael Harris should be leading off, and Acuna should be in a power production spot. You know, there's going to be that argument where, and really, as you think about the lineup, so much is dictated by where you choose to put Acuna, because that alters everybody else. And you could hit Acuna 1-2 R3, and you might not think, you know, what difference is that going to make for a team? It makes a huge difference with this team because everybody shifts around. You know, it used to be a guy like Acuna, he is your 3 hitter. He's the best hitter on your team. Put him in 3 spot. Now it's like, no, he's your 2 spot. That's where your best hitter goes. That's what baseball usually says now. With the Braves, it's like he's mostly been the leadoff guy. And that's how he came up. And people knew he was going to be a superstar. You know, he had that pedigree and that lineage and those rankings that, yeah, Ron Acuna is going to be a superstar. But when they brought him up, they didn't necessarily think he'd be a 40 home run guy like we saw a couple of years ago. So Acuna started as a leadoff guy, and they just kind of settled into that spot. You know, a guy like Michael Harris for most of last season was hitting 8th or 9th. And then as September came, he started to move up the order, near the top of the order, in fact. He had a surprising year for Vaughn Grissom. Everything they did last season, remember this, they didn't really have Ozzie Albies for a good deal of that season. So they weren't even working. You know, the lineup they put in there day after day that Snicker fill out on that lineup card didn't have Albies. Now he's back. You bring in Sean Murphy. You still have Travis d'Arnaud, who you can DH. You have Eddie Rosario. You can DH. Marcell Ozuna. You can DH. Give an off day to Olsen. They got a lot of offense. They got a lot of pitching. I like them a little more than the Mets in terms of calling for an NL East title. I would still go Braves. I mean, it's half and half. You actually get better odds to go with the Braves. That kind of swings me. But they've got the decision of where do we bat these guys. And if it's not going to be consistent, and it rarely is, let it be known, can all these guys kind of handle with one day hitting 2nd, the next day hitting 5th, one day hitting 3rd, the next day hitting 7th? They might have that kind of lineup this year. So the all-season storyline, they added even more offense with Murphy, but it's like, okay, where do we fit all these pieces? How do we bring Albies back to the puzzle? And where does he fit perfectly for this team? Those are your NL East storylines as we kind of give our divisional discussion this week on all things NL East. Thanks to Heather Klein and Josh Winchester for grabbing those photos. Take a break here. When we come back, on the flip side, got a lunch hunch for you. Got some football for you. Got some spring training for you. Games underway in Florida. More and more to come. Stay with us. It is Lunch Money on a Wednesday right here on the Bettor Sports Network.
Let's talk a little NBA because I found it interesting yesterday with those that are now all of a sudden going to be critical of Nikola Jokic and what he's accomplishing this year for the Denver Nuggets. As Denver is the top seed in the Western Conference right now, they've won 44 games so far during the course of the NBA regular season, and Nikola Jokic is well on his way to being a three straight time NBA MVP in the regular season. He's been remarkable. He's averaging a triple-double, nearly 25 points per game, over 11 rebounds a game, and 10 assists per game. His remarkable accomplishments have really poo-pooed or knocked down the idea of voter fatigue, which was a huge part of the conversation coming into the NBA regular season, thinking that there have only been 3 men, Bill Russell, Will Chamberlain, Larry Bird, that have ever won 3 consecutive NBA regular seasons. Mind you, you could never give that to Nikola Jokic because think about the historical ramifications it would be in the NBA. LeBron's never done it. Michael's never done it. How could Nikola Jokic do it? And then you get this, and it's the case of the hot take world that we're in, or I need something to say, or let's think of a different angle to approach a topic. But the idea that Nikola Jokic is a stat padder is complete and utter nonsense. I mean, you've had one person after another come out saying Nikola Jokic is not looking at his stat line during the course of an NBA game. He's not focused in on whether or not where his rebounds are, where his assists are in any particular game. He's having an historic season. He's shooting nearly 64% from the floor. He is being economical in the way that he's going about his business offensively. He's distributing the basketball. He's also been a willing rebounder as well. Why be critical of something that we're watching, which is historic? We're seeing him do stuff that no other NBA player has ever been able to go out there and accomplish. So as we go and look at Jokic, and he is going to be the MVP. It's not going to be Joel Embiid with the Philadelphia 76ers. It's not going to be anybody else that you want to throw out there. As we watch the brilliance of the Denver Nuggets, and everyone looks at the Western Conference and wants to look at teams like the Phoenix Suns if Kevin Durant is healthy, or the Los Angeles Clippers, or the Sacramento Kings, or, let's be honest, the very, very immature Memphis Grizzlies, and everybody wants to pick anybody else but the Denver Nuggets to come out of that West and get to themselves to the NBA Finals, even throwing the Golden State Warriors into the equation as the defending NBA champs. Well, I think we have to have a lot of respect for what Denver's been able to do this regular season and a healthy respect of going into the postseason. And I also think we have to have a respect of what Nikola Jokic is accomplishing as well, and not be critical just for the sake of being critical. That, to me, is utterly nonsense. For more content like this, check out Bettor Network at TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and also on YouTube.
Make bets and follow your fantasy team while you buy, sell, and trade collectibles in real time. Only on Bettor Sports Network.
Now back to Kyle Elfring.
Welcome you back in. It is Lunch Money. Lucy Keith's going to follow us coming up at 3 o'clock. Hope all is well out there in BSS viewer and listener land. I'll remind you, tomorrow, Hollywood Highlights. We're not going to be here for a regular Lunch Money. Instead, we'll be here to talk some movies. We'll probably have some fun with that, and probably going to have some fun on Twitter, too, so make sure to jump on board and follow us there. As we continue in hour 2, it is time for me to crack my knuckles and give you a lunch hunch. Shall we? Hockey. Quinn Hughes. Let me introduce you to Quinn Hughes. Plays for the Vancouver Canucks. He's an NHL defenseman. Quinn Hughes. When somebody asks you at the bar tonight, don't let them fool you with this question. Okay? Don't fall for this. I'm going to make sure all you BSN listeners know how to answer this. Because this will definitely be a question. And if not tonight at the local tavern, then this will probably be a question at your next sports trivia night. Because I know this will be in there. Somebody goes, who is the fastest defenseman to reach 200 assists in their career in the history of the NHL? Somebody ask you that question, you now know the answer. It is Quinn Hughes of the Vancouver Canucks. Got his 200th assist in his 263rd NHL game. It's kind of an assist maven as a blue liner. What's he got? He's number 2, I guess, in the NHL this year. Let me double check. Yeah, 55 assists in 59 games. Now, he does have 6 assists in his last 4. Tonight, Vancouver is up against Anaheim. Now, Anaheim is bad. Anaheim has given up the most goals in the NHL this season. They just played last night, and they have their number 1 goaltender, John Gibson, in net. My assumption is that a guy named Lucas Dostal is probably going to get the start tonight for the Anaheim Ducks. His numbers are pretty ugly. Save percentage is under 900. He's allowing 4 goals per game. Also, again, second of back-to-back. So you got all this working. A lot of things working here. Now, with Quinn Hughes, if you go over and you look at player props, you could do Quinn Hughes over under 1.5 assists. And the over is not too bad there. It's like plus, what was it? Plus, or I think it was minus, I think it was plus 135 maybe for assists. Maybe 155. Yeah, it was above 150 for 2 assists tonight. If you just go with points, meaning, he could get those points with 2 goals, doubtful, or he could get it with an assist and a goal, possible. But that goes to 135. Either one I like as a lunch hunch. So again, Quinn Hughes over under either 1.5 points, which is plus 135. And the 1.5 assist is plus 175. So that would be 2 assists tonight. Like I say, he just have 6 in his last 4. And he is a guy who really does provide the assist total. And they're facing the Ducks. So That is going to be my lunch hunch for this Wednesday night. There's where we stand on that. Speaking of Wednesday night, I talked a little bit about that Bettor Cast showdown that we've got this evening. Bettor Cast is brand new, something we're just starting here at BSN. What it is each and every night, we choose one sporting event or even one pop culture event to kind of get involved with, to maybe add an extra element of enjoyment to what you watch on TV. It's the element of answering questions in real time as the event happens. Whether it's, hey, who's going to make the next bucket? Is the next three-pointer coming from side A or side B? A trivia question. Whatever it is, join us in the Bettor Cast. Tonight, it's Pelicans Mavericks. Some NBA action. Let me double check that time just to make sure I've got it right here. I believe it's 7:30 Eastern, but I do want to double check. NBA, we've got Mavericks Pelicans at 7:30. So that's what we're looking at, 7:30 Eastern for the Mavericks and the Pelicans. So you fire up your app, you turn on the game, you're good to go. Let me help you out here. That's right. Our Bettor Sports Network Lunch Money listeners are going to have an extra edge here. Just a few news and notes. And again, you're gunning for prizes. I think it's like $100 to the Bettor Sports Shop over on the website. So there are things to play for here. But you're going to have some insight that the others will not. First off, the generals, the regs. Dallas is favored by a point. The over-under for this game is 234. It's a little high, 234. I think it's high on the Pelicans side. Now, they are the home team here. New Orleans has been playing some bad basketball. I looked at it before the show. They are 6-17 over their last 23. The good news is they're home tonight. They're 20-11 at home. It's pretty simple for New Orleans. Really simple for them. I'll talk about the Mavericks in a bit. But it's very simple for New Orleans. And it is this. As goes Brandon Ingram, as goes the Pelicans. That's it. If he's not draining jumpers and scoring in the high 20s, they're losing. So I throw that out because if you're participating in the Bettor Cast tonight, and let's say Ingram's off to a bad start, you probably just go all in on taking the Mavericks to cover, to win, all those things, scoring totals. So if you get that question, that's my lean there. On the Mavericks side, we all know the big trade, Kyrie Irving and Luka. Those two guys have played fine. The problem is the team as a whole doesn't play much defense, and they can't get wins. I think since that trade, they are 3-3. Last night, they did get a win. Mavericks topped Utah by 4. Now, a lot of times in the NBA, they're going to sit guys. It's the second of a back-to-back, which is true. And that could happen with Dallas. But as of now, that is not a fear. That is not a fear with the Mavericks. Why is it not a fear? It is because the Mavericks are fighting for their lives in the playoffs. They really want to get like a 4 seed, maybe a 3 seed. Right now, they're a 5 seed. So they got to win. So these games are very, very important for the Dallas Mavericks. Additionally, after tonight, they don't play again until Saturday. So I get it. It's a back-to-back and everything, but they are in win-now mode, and they've got time to rest after tonight. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. 5-5 is actually the record with Irving. I think they were 3-3, but now they're 5-5. Dallas's pace, and this is something that if you're in the wagering side of things, you pay attention to. The Dallas Mavericks are the second slowest team in the NBA in terms of pace. Hasn't really picked up much, even with the addition of Kyrie Irving. That's just how they play. That being said, they have been a lot more efficient offensively. Before Kyrie Irving showed up, they were averaging about 112, 111 points a game. Since Kyrie Irving got there, they're at 123 per game. So the offense is fine. The offense is fine. Irving's is fine. Doncic is fine. Those guys are doing fine. They can't play defense, and they haven't found that third option. Now, they are on the road tonight. They're favored by a point. I like Dallas to cover. I like Dallas to win straight up. Again, that's going to be a part of the Bettor Cast tonight, that Pelicans game hosting the Dallas Mavericks. Thought I'd give you a bit of a leg up on the competition as he gets settled in for that 7:30 tip-off. But I would bet all things Mavericks pretty well in that game. The only thing that would change is if Ingram comes out and he's hooping. If Ingram comes out and he's hitting jumpers, and Ingram comes out and he's shooting, 60%, 65% from the field, that could keep the Pelicans in that game. Anyway, have fun with it tonight. Every night we do that Bettor cast. I think we've got some maybe Big East quarterfinals tomorrow night on Thursday. I know Saturday night will be an XFL game. Sunday will be the Oscars. That's right. We're going to have a Bettor cast for the Academy Awards on Sunday. So that'll be a lot of fun. Okay, let's switch gears for a few moments. We've got about 10 minutes here. Now, we are going to talk some golf coming up here at the top of the next hour. I think Alex Bleichel's going to join us and talk to him about the upcoming championship, PGA Tour Championship, a Players Championship, I guess it is, taking place in Florida. It's a big, big golf event. That prize, I think I saw this right, $25 million is the total prize pool there. And to put that in perspective, I think like the PGA Championship is like 15. So this is a big, big prize pool that we got here. The winner gets like 5 million or something. So we're going to talk it over coming up with Alex. But first, I'm going to get to a little football. Want to talk about running backs. Yesterday, all the attention was on Lamar Jackson. All the attention was on Daniel Jones. These guys getting franchise tags. If you were an NFL running back yesterday, you didn't get good news yesterday at all. And it was kind of a continuation of bad news. First off, the two guys who were expected to be the most sought-after free agents as running backs will not be free agents this offseason. You're not going to have that. Josh Jacobs ain't a free agent. Saquon Barkley ain't a free agent. All these guys want to get to free agency because that's when the years come and that's when the money comes. Neither of these guys get to do that. NFL rules allow their teams to place a franchise tag on them. That's what the Giants did. That's what the Raiders did. I don't know if Barkley is hugely upset, but he's probably not happy. We do know Josh Jacobs. He has said he will not play under a franchise tag. We'll see. And again, these guys get tagged. You can still have a long-term contract. But for now, they got tagged. So that's part of the issue that NFL running backs have. Hey, man, we put in the time. We put in the effort. We have this kind of season. You kind of jingle free agency out in front of us, and we don't get it. You tag us instead. So these two guys, Barkley and Jacobs, both had very good years. It's time to cash in, right? There is no cash in. So that gives you the reality of the situation if you're an NFL running back. Additionally, if you're an NFL running back, this is just a further continuation of the fact that really nobody wants you. You're replaceable. Even if you're good, even if you're a guy that your teammates like, you are replaceable. Have you looked at the free agent list of running backs for this year? Guys who will actually get to be free agents. Guys who are not going to get tagged. That is guys like David Montgomery. That is guys like Damian Harris. That is somebody like Jamal Williams is a free agent. Kareem Hunt is a free agent. Dante Foreman is a free agent. Devin Singletary is a free agent. Now, again, I'm talking to a fantasy football playing universe. All of those guys were pretty well starting running backs in fantasy football. All of those guys were mostly starting running backs for their NFL teams. Right now, their market is junk. Their market is nothing. I mean, you've got Devin Singletary, who has been good. Certainly not great, but good enough. Who's going to be in the market for Devin Singletary or Damian Harris? Who's going to be in the market at all for Kareem Hunt? I mean, is there even a market really for David Montgomery? Is there? I don't think there is. Kareem Hunt's market's dead. That ain't happening. The only guy who has a market might be Jamal Williams, but everything we hear is that the market is Detroit. Like Jamal wants to stay there and the Lions want him back. And the only reason he has a market is because of this touchdown total that was outlandishly high this year. These running backs are going into free agency, and free agency begins a week from today. And none of them are going to break the bank. I mean, Saquon Barkley was hoping to get, 4 or 5 years maybe. Same for Josh Jacobs. Jacobs had over 2,000 yards rushing this year. Instead, because of the rules, he's going to get $10 million. 1-year contract. That's it. Dunzo. There you go. 1 year. Go for it. And he may threaten to hold out. He may renegotiate and get a deal. We'll see. You may do that with the Raiders. But right now, if you're an NFL running back, you just got a lot of information in the last 24 hours that says, you're worth less today than you were 2 years ago. Beyond that, I'll add this. This is worth noting, too. We just got done with that NFL Combine in Indianapolis. The class of running backs is pretty deep this year. It's not great. There's a lot of options. There's certainly a guy that's going to go in the first round in Bijan Robinson. So all these teams that might be interested even in a running back, they might say, you know what, we're sitting at number 22. We can maybe trade up to 15. We'll get Robinson there. If we don't get him, we're fine to settle for a guy in the second round or the third round. I look at these free agents, and it's like, do they just stay with their teams? I didn't even mention Miles Sanders. He's a free agent. There's another guy. Do all these guys just go back to their same team? Team knows them. They know the team. It's not like they're going to get a load of money from Houston. Not like the Arizona Cardinals are going to say, hey, Devin Singletary, will you play for us at $10 million a year? No, they're not going to do that. These guys could all stay with their same team. I don't know what kind of offers. Like, if I'm a team in need of a running back, let's honestly look at this list. Now, if Barkley or Jacobs have been there, and I'm a team that wants to pay for a running back, okay, I'd get interested in those guys. And, you figure out the numbers, the years, and the money, and you make it work. But if your name's not Saquon Barkley or Josh Jacobs, are you breaking the bank for Miles Sanders? Are you breaking the bank for David Montgomery? Guys that are fine, but let's look at Miles Sanders, a player who has an excellent track record, honestly. Miles Sanders, if you look at his 5-year NFL career, it's good. It's not great. It's good, though. He just got to a Super Bowl. He's been a piece of a successful franchise over his 5 years. Been to the playoffs, all that stuff. Even Philadelphia has never committed to him. Even Philadelphia say, we don't think you can get 250 carries, and so they stay away from that. They've all these years to say, Miles Sanders is our guy. They've never really committed to that. I mean, really, for the last 2 years, they've said, we like Miles Sanders, but we also like Gainwell. We also like Boston Scott. And, we got a running back at a quarterback position, so we're going to use him too. So they've had this opportunity, and they've never embraced it. So if you're Houston or, I keep coming back, let's say you're the Rams and you're looking to bring in competition with Cam Akers, you're not paying these guys. You're like, okay, if you want to come, here's our best offer. If you don't like it, so be it. We'll get a guy in the 4th round. We'll get somebody else who will take $2 million less. And so this running back market is really just quiet. It's silent. There's not a place to make dough. And I wonder, as I look at this list, like just kind of thinking out loud here, Patriots probably don't bring back Damian Harris. I don't think that fits for the Patriots. They're fine drafting anybody and bringing them in as a backup. Jamal Williams already said, I think the Detroit return kind of makes sense. They said, 5 days ago that they're not ready to, they may never be ready to actually use DeAndre Swift. Miles Sanders, I don't think that's going to work cap-wise with Philadelphia. They got a lot of guys who are set to be free agents. I don't think Miles Sanders returned. I could see Montgomery back with the Bears. I think that's possible. He may say, there's something going on here. I can still be the RB1. Because honestly, if David Montgomery goes elsewhere, I don't know if he's going to be the guy for any team. Donta Foreman with Carolina, they've already said they want him back. I don't think his market's going to be very alive. He may come back. And then Devin Singletary, the same thing. There's got to be a feature of Devin Singletary where he says, this is my 4th year in the league. I've been fine. I've been good. I've had my moments, all that stuff. I'm with a winning team. I'm with Josh Allen. I'm with Stephon Diggs. Get a fair deal from Buffalo, and I'll stay in town. That may happen too. It's almost like these guys have been franchise tagged without getting the franchise tag just because of the way the NFL world works. But for running backs, kind of a rough few days. If you're looking to make a killing or you're looking to buy that new house, that new McLaren F1, whatever it may be, I don't know if it's going to happen. You can still afford the McLaren F1, even if you sign a measly, $5 million contract. Don't let those agents tell you otherwise. Devin Singletary and Miles Sanders. You can still get that hot rod if you want it. Okay, breather for us. When we come back, shall we talk a little golf? I think we shall. We're getting set for what many call the 5th major down in Florida. So I know it's very big in the DFS landscape, the wagering world. Golf is upon us. I think we're, a month away, a little over a month away from the Masters. and then, of course, the summer season. So let's get you the storylines. What's been going on up to this point? What can we expect this weekend? We will do that next. Stay with us. More coming your way right here on BSN. Kyle Elfrink, it is Lunch Money.
Monday Night Rants with Edward Rouse on Bettor Sports Network.
Do you believe in the Madden curse? Do you think that's a real thing?
I did. Now, I don't think it's as big of a deal anymore, but it was a real thing for a solid 10, 15 years.
Yeah, it was Sean Alexander, LaDainian Tomlinson, Peyton Hillis.
LT was never on the cover. I know that.
Was he not? I thought he was one. Okay, well, you do know all the covers of everything.
Yeah, okay. So if you want, I could do this real quick. So Garrison Hurst is the first official Madden cover athlete, 1999. 2000, I believe they still put John Madden on the cover. And then 2001 is where it all started. So 2001, you have Eddie George. 2002, Dante Culpepper. 2003, Marshall Falk. 04, Michael Vick. 05, Ray Lewis, first defensive player on the cover.
Okay.
06, Donovan McNabb. 07, Sean Alexander.
Okay.
08, Vince Young. 09, Brett Favre.
Okay.
10 is a trick one because it's
no way you know.
And Larry Fitzgerald. 11, Drew Brees. 12, Peyton Hillis. 13, Calvin Johnson, I believe so.
You're right.
14.
No way you know all this.
14, also a trick question. I believe that's the Madden 25 cover, and it's Barry Sanders, unless you got it for the new consoles, in which case Adrian Peterson
oh my God.
was on the cover.
You're not cheating. You're not looking at.
Swear on my life. Swear on my life.
Okay, keep on going.
15, you have Richard Sherman.
Okay.
16, hold on. 16 is Odell Beckham.
Okay.
16. 17, now this is the one I get mixed up because 17 and 18 are back-to-back Patriots.
They are.
17, I think, is Gronk, and 18 is Brady.
You are correct.
19 is Antonio Brown.
Correct.
20, Patrick Mahomes.
Oh my goodness.
21, Lamar Jackson. 22, Brady Mahomes. 23, John Madden. Yeah, dude, I'm a cover nerd when it comes to this stuff.
We now know, but that was really impressive. I don't know how.
Thank you.
That's literally 29 of them or something like that. Wow, that is. You did not miss a single one, and you even got the special editions where they had two people on the covers.
Monday Night Rants on Bettor Sports Network.
Okay, there we go. I'm told that song is the theme song of the PGA Tour. Could have snuck it past me. I better brush up on my, I know the Champions League theme for soccer. I did not know PGA had a theme song. I'm sure our next guest does. Thought we'd take a look since we've kind of got some time on a Wednesday. You know, there's nothing huge going on. We haven't gotten into the NCAA tournament. Baseball is still in spring training. You know, no playoffs for the NBA or NHL yet. It's kind of a fun weekend to sit in and take in some golf. And for some of you, maybe you've been following golf for the last 5-6 weeks. Others of you might be saying, wait a second, they play golf in the winter? Yeah, they do. They do. It's not just a summer thing. Our next guest certainly knows this. Going to take a preview of what's going on down in Florida, the Players Championship. Joining us now is Alex Blickel, pro golfer, I should say, but also Director of Analytics at the FTN Network. He is with us to give us some insight, DFS-wise, wagering-wise, fantasy-wise. Tell us about this course, all the good stuff. Alex, a pleasure to have you hanging out with us on a Wednesday. How you doing today, man?
Doing great. Was really enjoying that running back discussion you had going on. Wow.
Yeah, had to end it. I had so much more material to pass along, but hey, free agency starts next week, so I can complain again. Then I wanted to get you on because this is a biggie this week. It's not, you know, to the casual fan, Alex, they're not going to say, well, this isn't the Masters, this isn't the British Open. But I think most people regard this as like a fifth major, the Players Championship, right?
Absolutely. And I think that it's probably fair to say that this is year after year the strongest field. It's therefore the hardest tournament to win as well.
How about this course? Is it one that is truly challenging? Is it one where it depends on what kind of wind or weather we get? What are we looking at this week in Florida?
There's a ton of trouble on this golf course, all water. And the way I like to categorize it is this course has more high leverage shots than any other. And the way I would define a high leverage shot is the difference between a good shot and a bad shot just means more than it usually does. So the two best examples I can give are the par 5 16th and the iconic par 3 17th, where on the 16th, a great second shot is going to lead to an eagle opportunity. Even if you don't make the eagle putt, you're almost assured a birdie. A bad shot on that hole, you're going to be in the water. Now you're dropping from about 100 yards away. You have to get up and down for par. And then you get to the 17th, and it's a very similar story. The best shots are going to find the green, give the player a chance at birdie. The worst shots are going to find the water, as we see over and over and over again, especially when it gets windy and super difficult in that way. And then you have to hit from the drop zone or back at the tee for your third shot. So you get a lot more of those types of high leverage shots at this course than pretty much any other on tour. And so the result that you get is the variance seems to really be on blast here.
Yeah. And I always hear the phrase, certainly with wagering, DFS, whatever it is, you'll hear horses for courses. Find the guys that play this sort of course or, this turf or, they've had success here before. Are there any names immediately that kind of fit a course that is this difficult?
Yeah, so I'm very much a proponent of not looking at course history. Course history, I think, can take you in some pretty harmful directions, let's say, just because it's such a small sample size. What I look at is more course fit. And so trying to find these skill sets that really translate into success at a certain golf course. This one, ironically, given the fact that the variance is so high here, is one of the courses where we can most accurately and most reliably predict who is expected to have success. Again, the variance is so high, so someone who sets up really well here can still play poorly. They can still find the water a few times and they end up missing the cut, that sort of thing. But the course fit model is the most powerful here than it is any other golf course on tour, which is pretty darn cool because it's such an important event. And some of the guys who really stand out, I think Patrick Cantlay really fits the bill. What we're looking for here is driving accuracy. And at FTN, we have our own proprietary strokes gained driving accuracy metric. So instead of just looking at the percentage of fairways hit, we're really isolating the two components of off the tee play into distance and accuracy. And one of the coolest things about the statistic is it really informs us a lot about how well a player kind of manages his way around the golf course. So a famous golf quote is, golf is a game of misses. And more importantly, it's making sure that when you miss, you're missing in such a way that you're not getting penalized too much. You still have a chance to recover. And that type of course management really comes into play on a golf course like this, where, as we said, there's trouble around every single corner.
Well, and you mentioned those statistics. A lot of our audiences may be familiar with football, baseball, certainly. And there's this point where, after 1 week, the stats don't matter. 2 weeks, the stats don't really matter. You got to get, more moments, more occurrences, events, if you will. When is that point? We're still relatively early in the season. Are we kind of to that point in PGA where you can look at certain advanced analytics like you guys have at FTN and say, these are sticky, or is this maybe something a month from now we feel better about?
So the biggest difference between golf and, let's say, football in that manner is data in football from 1 year to the next doesn't always translate, right? Like a quarterback is going to have a whole new offensive line. He's going to have new weapons on the outside. He might even be on a whole new team. So you really can't transfer statistics from 1 year to the next in a perfect manner like you can with golf. So the stats from just this year certainly haven't stabilized yet in PGA, but we can very reliably just use data from last year and even the data from the year before. And then we can also look at which stats become relevant most quickly when they have kind of changed. And driving accuracy is one of those, where when a player is suddenly driving the ball much more accurately than he has in the past, we are more inclined to believe that that is a change in skill rather than just some random kind of variance in his game.
Alex Blickel is with us. He is a pro golfer, also director of analytics at FTN. Getting set for the Players Championship. TPC Sawgrass, by the way, is the course they're going to be playing. I think it's about 7,200 yards thereabout. Let's get into some particulars and some names. I guess I'd start with the DFS world. That is not something I'm hugely comfortable with for golf, like talking about strategies and so on and so forth. So I'll kind of turn it over to you here. For those who might be looking for some action, something to do, maybe something unique, maybe they want more skin in the game as they watch golf. If they're thinking of the DFS world, what would be things that you'd point to for this weekend, or certain players you'd point to for this weekend, strategies, whatever it may be, as they look ahead to Thursday through Sunday?
One of the biggest challenges with PGA DFS in comparison to football, baseball, that sort of thing is there's really no way to get correlation unless you have like a very extreme weather week where one wave. So players tee off in two different waves. You've got your group that's going to tee off in the morning on Thursday, then the afternoon on Friday, and then you have a group that's going to tee off in the afternoon Thursday, morning on Friday. And unless you have a weather split where one of those waves has a big advantage over the other, there's really no way to correlate in PGA. So the strategy aspect is a little bit less emphasized in PGA DFS than it is in baseball or football DFS. And that is a challenge, but it also then makes it a little bit easier for the casual player to find success early on, because you don't need to be like masters of the strategy of the game. You just need to pick players well, and you can really just rely on projections in that standpoint.
I'm looking at this would be the DraftKings book, outright winner. And again, you're taking one guy against the field. It's kind of a stretch with any of these. But the top five are Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, Patrick Cantlay, who you mentioned, and Max Homa. Is Cantlay your favorite of those five, or does one of the other guys make the cut?
From a DraftKings point of view, or an outright bet?
Outright bet, wagering to win.
For an outright bet, I'm kind of avoiding the top. I don't find much value there. I think that the first guys that I'm going to, the first guys that I have bets on this week are Will Zalatoris and Tony Finau. Finau's 28-1 in most places. Zalatoris, I believe, 35-1. And I believe that best number is on DraftKings Sportsbook, if it's still there. Okay. And both of those guys, like the argument is kind of that I only believe that they're one tier below the best in the world. And yet from an odds standpoint, you're getting much, much better odds than the guys like you mentioned. The top of the board, 8-1, 10-1 for Rory, Scheffler, Rahm, and then you drop to 28 and 30 for these two guys. So I think that just from an odds point of view, I would rather bet there. I think it's easier to find value in that range than it is all the way at the top, because the top is going to be so efficiently kind of priced, and then also these books, they're taking a pretty large hold in these outright markets.
Alex, let me ask you, for the, I'll just call us amateur player, the person who's maybe a weekend DraftKings or wagerer, if you will, on golf. Are they better served with going like the top 10 route, like golfers to finish in the top 10 or top 5? Like, what would you recommend for maybe somebody making that first entry, if you will, into the PGA wagering world?
Honestly, I think it depends on the player. And this is kind of a cheating answer, but the best thing to do is, if you have access to sportsbooks that allow each way bets, that's the way to go. And an each way bet allows you. So for example, Bet Rivers is one of them, and it allows you to make an outright bet on a player. So let's say you're getting a guy at 50-1. Half of that bet is going to go to just the outright. And then the other half is going to go to 1/5 payout of those odds for a top 6. And when you compare like those odds at the top 6, so that would be 20-1 on a top 6, and you compare it to like the best available top 5s, best available top 5 might be 50-1 or 15-1, sorry. And so then you're getting an extra spot, and you're getting, 5 points better in the market. So each way bets are a really, really great way for casual bettors to get their money in such a way that they're kind of not assured positive expected value, but they're definitely in a better position with their money than they would be just trying to fire on some random top 10s or outrights.
Alex Blickel is with FTN Network. You can find him on Twitter at Alex Blickel and the numeral 1. Alex Blickel 1 is where you can find that. There's a lot of golf inside and things leading up to this weekend that you can hunt down there. Long shots. Let's go deeper on the board. Any guys that you would throw maybe a couple of bucks on, whether it's DFS or maybe just an outright wager that you kind of like lower on the totem pole this week?
On the outright side of things, absolutely. This name doesn't really coincide with the thought of outright or a long shot, but Sam Burns was initially 75 to 1 this week. I believe he's up to 90 to 1 on some books now. I run a expected win rate model each week that basically just kind of predicts the future win rate for a player starting right now. And Sam Burns is actually 6th in that model for me. And yet we're getting him at 75 to 1 to 90 to 1, anywhere in that range. I mean, I think this is honestly one of my favorite bets of the year. And it's because he's not playing that well. But the nice thing is, one of the reasons he's so high in that expected win rate model for me is because his round to round volatility is sky high. And so when a guy has that level of volatility, it basically informs us that, number one, recent form doesn't necessarily matter for him because he is naturally going to have rounds where he plays super well and then he plays super poorly. And he's just going to bounce back and forth at times. And he's shown in the past, he's very capable of then kind of out of the blue, putting it all together. And when he's in contention, he tends to get the job done. So I love this outright bet for Sam Burns. As I said, it's honestly one of my favorite bets of the year.
Also, check out FTN bets for more from that side. Also, FTN Daily on the DFS side. A couple of more things for you, Alex, and maybe these are more general and not so much down to this weekend. But through the first set of events this year, and I think a lot of people probably, if they saw a golf tournament, it was probably the Waste Management. That's kind of the popular one. But there have been numerous other tournaments going on. Any storylines that have emerged for you in the first, 6-7 weeks of the season that are worth following, or a player that's come out of nowhere? Kind of, where are we at thus far in this PGA season in your mind?
The biggest difference this season in past seasons have been these elevated events that the tour has come up with, kind of as a counter to the live golf that formed last year. And so this is the first time we're entering the Players' Championship in quite a few years, where we've already had a number of events where all of the best players in the world have played against each other over and over and over again. And typically, this is the first time we're seeing all of them together competing with one another. So in a way, it kind of makes it a little bit easier to foresee what's going to happen, because we already know who's playing really well up against the best competition in the world. There's no shock factor when you're going to show up to TPC Sawgrass this week where, oh my God, I look at the competition I'm up against this week. Guys have already been kind of in this environment for several weeks now. And so that's a really kind of new dynamic for this tournament. And I think it could end up meaning that we see some just outstanding golf all around.
You mentioned Live, and obviously that is the offshoot Renegade League, if you want to call it that. And PGA still the monster. Live trying to maybe get up those scraps and spin their way to success. We will not have, I guess, the guys, I think I saw this today, Alex, who finished first, second, and third in this tournament last year are not in this tournament this season. So that opens up things a bit. And then I also, again, not more of a PGA novice, I will ask this question. I saw they are changing, I guess, the cut. They're almost eliminating the cut line, as I understand it. Talk about that change that the PGA is doing, why they're doing it. Do you like it? And when does it all go into effect?
This is actually something we talked a lot about on my show, Pro vs. Pro at FTN yesterday. And so basically what they're doing is they're taking these designated events. So I believe there are going to be 8 of these events next year. And instead of having a full field, 100 to 120 guys with a cut, they're just going to make them low 70s for the field size, no cut. And honestly, it's difficult to answer what they're trying to accomplish here. The explanation that they're giving is a very predictable one. It's that, hey, we want to be able to promise our sponsors and our fans that the best players in the world are going to be able to play on the weekend. But the thing is, if Rory McIlroy, for example, would have missed the cut, but instead he's playing because they've eliminated the cut in that event, guess what? He's 15 strokes behind the leader. Do people really want to watch him anyway, or do they want to watch the guys in contention? So I kind of think that it's not a fake explanation, but I think what maybe happened there is that the players themselves realized that they had leverage over the tour because of Live, and they were able to kind of negotiate this for themselves so that the best players in the field know that they're going to have these guaranteed checks, and pretty large checks, by the way, on a weekly basis when they get into the designated events.
Yeah, it's a great point. You mentioned the 8 events. Will those be the majors, or will those be like in addition to the majors?
So the majors and the Players Championship are going to stay as they are. The exemptions are going to be the same. They're going to have the full fields and the cuts. It's these other events that this year they're called elevated events. Next year, I guess they're going to be called designated events. I don't know if that language is meaningfully different in any way, but basically, I don't know if they have the exact tournaments planned. I know there was kind of rumors of the elevated or designated events changing from year to year. So this year was the Waste Management, and then Genesis, and then Arnold Palmer, and then maybe next year the Honda Classic would get it or something like that. So I don't believe that we know which ones will be elevated yet, but we do know that it's not going to be the majors. It's not going to be the Players Championship. Those are going to stay as they are. Personally,
do you like the idea of, do we need 120 golfers every week? Do you prefer 7? I mean, what would be your personal preference?
So I do think that there's something to be said about the integrity of a golf tournament with a full field and a cut line. Like as a professional golfer myself, the cut line is a very real pressure for one thing, but it's just an aspect of golf. Like, I always liked the feeling of getting through a cut and then you're on the weekend and now you have earned the right to play stress-free knowing you're going to make a check. Whereas just showing up stress-free knowing you're going to make a check, I do think one thing it could lead to is players just kind of checking out early. Like if they don't have to battle back to make a cut, do they feel the need to expend all the mental energy that it takes when you're playing poorly to claw your way back through the cut line and then to make a check? Or are guys just going to say, you know what, I'm going to make a check anyway. I'll just coast these next 3 days. No one's going to enjoy watching me, but I don't care. And I'll go for the win next week again.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, you can argue both ways, but Thursday and Friday means something right now.
Right.
Because everybody's trying to get to Saturday. And then not that it wouldn't mean anything. You're still trying to get that check bigger. But you'd have a lot more guys in the normal fields that are trying to pressurize and get up into that cut line, whatever it may be, on Saturday and Sunday. Players Championship this weekend starts tomorrow morning. TPC Sawgrass. Again, we've got some coverage on BSN. You can find it on demand, so hunt down that stuff. Of course, Alex and the crew at FTN Network with loads of insight into this weekend. FTN Bets, FTN Daily. Leave me with your top 3 calls for this week. Who, if you had to whittle it down to 3 dudes, and again, there's 100 plus, 3 dudes you feel best about this week.
I will start with Keith Mitchell. Finds himself in contention again. Keith Mitchell is a guy that we have been talking about a lot at FTN, and particularly because he's driving the ball as well as anybody else in the world right now. And for anyone who really knows golf at a high level, they kind of know everything starts with how you perform off the tee. It's the only aspect of golf that is independent of everything else. So, like, for example, if you're a great iron player, you can't take advantage of that skill if you're driving the ball into the trees every hole, right? Driving is the only thing that isn't affected by any other part of the game, and therefore it's the driving force, no pun intended, of the game. And Keith Mitchell has been as good as anybody, so I love him as a DraftKings play. I love his futures, by the way. If anyone's into betting futures, there are some pretty crazy high numbers for him on the majors this year that you can really take advantage of. Second one, I think, would be that Siwoo Kim has another great event. Siwoo Kim has been a guy that we're kind of predicting a breakout for this year, already has a win. His game fits this golf course exceptionally well. He's accurate off the tee. He's really good around the green, and he's great with his mid irons. Those are kind of the top 3 things that I'm looking for this week in course fit. And then the final one that I'll give is not a bold call by any means, but I think that Jon Rahm is going to bounce back in a big way. I think the one concerning aspect for him is in the last 2 events, even the one he won at the Genesis, his driving accuracy hasn't been what we're accustomed to seeing from him. I think he bounces back this week, and I think there's a really good chance that he's in contention. And the reason I bring this up is because I think that there's a very high possibility that on the DraftKings side of things, he comes in a lot lower owned than Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy. And if you get a chance to use the best golfer in the world at low ownership, don't you want to do that every time?
Hey, Alex, phenomenal, man. First time you and I believe crossed paths and got to do this one-on-one. So great talking golf with you. Great insight. You guys do wonderful work over at FTN. We'll have to do it again, I think, with the real majors, if you will. So maybe in the next month or two, we'll get you back onto the program to review the preview the weekend, I should say. But thanks a ton for the insight leading up to the players, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Awesome.
You can find him on Twitter at AlexBlickel1 is where he is at, FTN Network. He is also a pro golfer. We mentioned that a couple of times. So he knows that of what he speaks when he talk about Alex Blickel. Players Championship tomorrow. Thought we'd sneak in a little bit of golf. I know we got the golf fans out there, and it's certainly getting bigger and kind of more locked into the fantasy landscape, I think, with each and every passing year. Big thank you to Alex for stopping by on the show. Let us take a break. When we return, want to get you a little bit more football. Got some baseball before we finish things off. We'll check in on spring camps, all that excitement. More coming your way. It's Lunch Money on BSN.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, presented by FantasyAlarm.com. Weekdays at 5 Eastern.
People are always very critical when it comes to fantasy baseball. I would say this, and I'm a big fantasy basketball guy. I love fantasy football. There's no fantasy sport that's even close to being as hard as baseball. The season, having to figure out, especially if you're playing weekly, which I don't like to play. Weekly with the 2 starts, having to look at the schedule and everything. I mean, you play in basketball as well. There's no fantasy sport that's harder or more involved than baseball. It takes forever. You take a whole night to do your fab on Sundays.
Yeah, baseball is the most challenging, and I think that's why the popularity has gone down. People don't want to work. They don't want to put in the time. There's a lot of strategy that goes into it. You have to know the player pool. That's why I love doing these 15-team, 50-round drafts. I mean, 750, 800 players. You go to all the minor leaguers. I took Spencer Strider last year in my first draft Champions League in round 40, and that turned out to be a phenomenal pick. So it puts you on to knowing everything about every team. And yeah, it's a lot of work. So I definitely think that it's a challenge, and I just feel like people don't want to put in time and work anymore. And I'm not saying fantasy football is easy. It's not. But you cannot tell me that fantasy football is more difficult than fantasy baseball. I play both sports. I don't have an allegiance to either one. I love both. I play both. But, fantasy baseball is a grind, man. You got to put in months of preparation. Spring training is important. They helped me get Carlos Rodon a couple years ago. I was not on him until the spring, seeing the velocity and the changes. So there's a lot of things you can discover in the spring. And this is the first real full spring training that we've had in years. Now, there is the WBC that is going to cut into it a little bit, and some guys will not be at camp, but the spring can help you discover. And again, you're talking about, even if you're in a 12-team league, I mean, you're probably going to have 23 to 30 roster spots. And then the 15-team leagues and the mono leagues, I mean, you got to know a lot. I mean, it takes a lot of skill to win a fantasy baseball title. We've seen it, right? You could have an average player win a fantasy football league. We've all been in leagues where this guy's not that good. He's probably going to win a championship at some point. Things break right. He has a great draft, picks up a player off the waiver wire. That's not happening in fantasy baseball, man. You do not see bad players win fantasy baseball championships. You just don't. It's a 6-month season. You can't afford to take a week or two off from fab. You can't do it. Last year, say you took off the week where Taylor Ward was the big pickup. You lost a player that was a contributor most of the season. I know we had a couple of down periods, and Taylor Ward was a player I added in multiple leagues, but you can't take that time off. You can't afford to miss out. And, every little detail is important. So I know fantasy baseball is not as popular as it used to be, but I personally feel it's because people don't want to work hard. They just don't. Everyone wants the easy way out now. They want easy access. That's why people don't read anymore. They want a quick video. Fantasy baseball is a lot of work, trust me. But you know what? When you win a championship, it's really gratifying.
Make bets and follow your fantasy team while you buy, sell, and trade collectibles in real time. Only on Bettor Sports Network.
Lunch Money, where we don't take your money, we make you money. Now back to Kyle Elfrink.
And maybe we'll make you a lot of money today. We just had good stuff there with Alex Blickel of FTN Network talking golf for the Players Championship. Again, that starts tomorrow. Gave you my lunch hunch. Got the Bettor cast tonight. Gave you my bet du jour. Yeah, cross our fingers. We'll make you money today. Quick update. Action from Florida. And we don't know much about this situation, but Victor Robles of the Washington Nationals, I was talking about the Nationals earlier and how dreadful they appear to be. Bad news for Robles. He was carted off the field today after making a catch. He tried to walk it off, eventually could not. So no news on his true status here, but did want to pass along that Robles is out. And believe me, if he is out, you're probably moving Lane Thomas to center field, and that Garrett Stone guy might be up. It becomes, not that it was great with Robles, but it becomes even uglier without Robles. We got some more baseball coming your way, but do want to sneak in a bit more football. A lot of news still coming out after the franchise tag, and now, of course, we all kind of look forward to free agency. It's a week from today, March 15th, that free agency begins. And I think coming up on Friday, we will have some news for you right here on Lunch Money about a little game, little contest that we are offering you, the loyal and very valuable BSN listener and viewer, concerning NFL free agency. And it should be a lot of fun. I know in the chat room, everybody likes to make predictions about where so-and-so may end up. Well, since you love that so much, we're going to make it official. We're going to put everybody's hide on the line and make some official predictions on where guys will end up. So stick around Friday. We will get you that here on Lunch Money. I would promise that tomorrow, but again, tomorrow we've got that Hollywood highlight show. So you're not going to get it tomorrow on the show. What you are going to get is a little more football. And I talked earlier about the whole Lamar Jackson thing. I talked about the running backs. Did want to mention the New York Giants and honestly tell you that if you are the Giants and you had sat here, right at the end of the season after that playoff loss against Philadelphia, that was pretty ugly. And you said, don't worry, Brian Dable, don't worry, Giants are going to be fine. You're going to get a new contract with Daniel Jones, and you're going to tag Saquon Barkley. The Giants would have taken that in a heartbeat. And it looked for a long time with this process that it was actually going to end up being a franchise tag for Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley going into free agency. That is really how this storyline was shaping up. Instead, we got the news Tuesday. Really, the Giants had the best day you could ask for. And it happened like within 30 minutes of that franchise tag deadline that Daniel Jones agreed to the 4 years, 140, I think it was. Maybe 4 years, 140, I think that. Maybe 150, my God. The money's so hard in the NFL. Who knows? He got a lot of money. How about that? But he got a 4-year contract. Saquon Barkley goes with the franchise tag. Now he gets $10 million. I wouldn't guess Saquon Barkley's particularly enamored about that. But as of now, we haven't heard anything like, oh, I'm not going to show up to camp, and oh, I hate this, and the Giants don't respect me. We haven't heard that yet. Maybe it's still coming. But again, from a Giants perspective, it's a perfect day. And furthermore, with the Daniel Jones thing, again, NFL contracts aren't worth a whole lot when you really get down to brass tacks on it. They, in effect, can move on from Daniel Jones after 2 years. And that will be, that's never an easy move. You got to have somebody else to turn to. But the Giants are probably saying, at some point in a fourth round or a fifth round, we'll take a quarterback that we really like and maybe have him as a backup. Somebody who's not going to come in here and threaten Daniel Jones, but he at least gives us an option if 2 years from now we're not making any progress. If we're still sitting here and it's a 9-8 team or whatever it may be. And Daniel Jones, despite the improvements this year, I think still has question marks surrounding him. And, in the fantasy game, he's a QB2, that run capability vaults him up to that level. In the real life game, is Daniel Jones a top 10 guy? Nah, he isn't. Can he play like a top 10 guy on a random week? Yeah, he can do that. But overall, you're not really looking at a top 10 guy. But the beauty of what the Giants are doing is they don't necessarily need Daniel Jones, nor does any NFL team need their quarterback to be a stud. You can win without that. It helps a lot, by the way, if you have the stud. But those guys aren't falling off trees and they don't enter free agency. You almost have to get lucky to get those guys. So I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you find a QB with a heartbeat, you try to keep him. And Daniel Jones showed a heartbeat this year. I'm sure Brian Dable pounded the table. Oh, I like that. Brian Dable pounded the table to keep Daniel Jones. I'm sure that happened. And so the Giants are in a pretty good spot. They didn't have to kill their salary cap to get this thing done. They get to have the carryover effect of the same guys. They didn't have to commit to multiple years to Saquon Barkley. Like, no team wants to do that. It goes back to what I was discussing with running backs. Nobody wants to deal with running backs under a 4-year contract. It's just not a winning setup. It's not a money-making opportunity for the team. It's a money-losing proposition for the team. So the Giants had a really good Tuesday. Now, they still have to find some receivers, and they still have to find pieces. They're not a finished product, and I wouldn't say they're a huge threat to the Eagles. I wouldn't say they're a big threat to the Cowboys, but they're a threat. They're a playoff team. And by keeping those guys, having that perfect Tuesday, still a threat and still a playoff team, I think, going into the year. A couple of other things coming out of the news yesterday. The Arizona Cardinals report there DeAndre Hopkins is on the block, as he should be. Got no problem with the Cardinals putting him on the block. Reports saying that it's going to probably cost like a second-round pick and probably some compensatory picks to get DeAndre Hopkins. It's not going to cost a ton. The list of free agent wide receivers is not all that impressive. So honestly, the easiest way to improve your standing at wide receiver is to trade for DeAndre Hopkins. Now, he is owed a lot of money. He is due a lot of money, and I think he's on the back end of his career. He's still good, though. I mean, he had a very good return after the PED suspension. Better than I would have bet on, by the way, with DeAndre Hopkins. But teams there will be interested. If they can't get Hopkins, maybe Brandon Cooks works. It's a decent class of NFL wide receivers. There are certainly some guys that can go in the first round. There's nobody that really features as a top 10 pick overall. So if you're looking for a true difference maker at wide receiver, I don't know if that guy's readily available. So overall, with free agency in the draft, trade market, DeAndre Hopkins, you're probably your top guy. Speaking of the trade market, we got a report that was almost a counter report regarding Derrick Henry and the Tennessee Titans. I think it was like 2 days ago. There was a report that said, oh, yeah, Derrick Henry's on the market. And we talked about it here on the show, me and Ray. I guess it was Monday. And I was all for it. I have got zero issue with the Tennessee Titans saying, you know what? We've reached peak Titan. We've tightened up enough, as they like to say down there. And it's time to move on. I mean, Derrick Henry, we're at the point of dwindling returns. I'm sorry, that's where we're at. Derrick Henry's a free agent next year. They should be trading him, okay? This team lost 8 games in a row to end the season. They should be moving on from Ryan Tannehill. I don't know if I initially want to make the move right now to Malik Willis. Maybe you can keep Tannehill for another year. But like Derrick Henry, if you shop him and you get something you like, pull the trigger. And it's not because Derrick Henry's washed up. It isn't. But Derrick Henry right now has value, whether it's, maybe it's a first round pick and conditionals with Derrick Henry. Maybe it's a second round pick and conditionals. I can tell you this, his value right now is better than it's going to be at the trade deadline, I would suspect. And you run the risk of injury. You run the risk of not finding a trading partner in season, and thus you have nothing when he walks away as a free agent. Because I guarantee you the Titans are not signing Derrick Henry as a free agent. It just ain't going to happen. I just talked about the running backs. There's no reason that any of these guys are going to get big contracts. Even Derrick Henry, not going to get a big contract. So the Titans should have him on the market. But again, a counter report said he's not. So we'll see where it goes. On the QB side, Aaron Rodgers reportedly did have that meeting yesterday with the Jets. As a Jet is wont to do, they flew out to LA or California and met up with Aaron Rodgers. So we'll see how that works. I look at Rodgers and I get it. You're getting Aaron Rodgers and the Jets think they're ready to win. And they've tried this before. Certainly they tried it with the last Packer great with Brett Favre. I get where they're coming from here. I got to see the final package, but I can't imagine that it's going to make much sense to me. And if they really quote unquote overpay, like they give multiple first round picks or anything silly like that, that just really is a huge indictment on Zach Wilson. I mean, just a monumental indictment. And the same guys that would be making this call on Aaron Rodgers, aren't they the same guys who made the call on Zach Wilson? So that's a little worrisome from that front. If you're wondering, the Jets are reportedly not interested in Lamar Jackson. It's kind of like a I don't know if it's Aaron Rodgers or bust, but it's kind of shaping up that way. I mean, Carr's already ended up in New Orleans. You've got Geno Smith back with Seattle. Doesn't sound like Garoppolo is really on their radar. Doesn't sound like the Jets are really thinking of trading up for a quarterback to maybe get one of those top 3 or 4 guys. So they're all in on Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers did seek permission from the Packers to talk to the Jets. Packers granted it. Packers want to trade him, and good for them again. I hate for it to sound like I just don't value these players because, like, I was talking about running backs, I was talking about Derrick Henry, talking about Hopkins, talking about Rodgers, talking about Lamar Jackson. But, man, every time I look at this, these guys are replaceable, and you don't want to get in this salary cap hell. You know, and you might say, no, Aaron Rodgers is not replaceable. Again, you don't need Aaron Rodgers to do what you did last year. What'd you do last year? You missed the playoffs, right? You don't need Aaron Rodgers. So I get it. He's good. He's really good. But he didn't do anything for you on the field. You got other needs. Now, sure, it may be nice to keep Rodgers, but you can't fill those other needs if you're paying him $50 million. You got Jordan Love. You invested a pick in him. Maybe he's as good as Rodgers. He's a tenth as cheap or tenth as expensive. So all these guys are replaceable, and the money talks, you know, and it causes you to do things. I mean, quite frankly, the Ravens are sitting there with their non-exclusive tag on Jackson because of the money. Usually always comes down to money. It's coming down to money for Jackson, coming down to money for the Ravens, and all these guys, it comes down to money. So we'll see what happens with Rodgers. Mentioned Garoppolo. Houston is probably the leader for his services right now. Washington, I guess they could get involved. Ron Rivera has been very blunt when asked about Sam Howell, the rookie QB. I think he said like 2 weeks ago, well, he's not our starting quarterback yet. And then I think today we got a report, Ron Rivera saying, oh, yeah, if we bring in a vet, he's going to compete and probably win over Sam Howell. So I guess you can say Washington is at least considering options. Now, I just hope those options don't have the initials B and M. We don't need another Baker Mayfield running through. Oh, goodness gracious. Did you see that the Niners and the Rams may be in a bidding war for Baker Mayfield? We'll see. Okay, quarterback news, man. It never stops. Thank the heavens that Ray Flowers doesn't have to sit in the middle of this QB news. There's a lot of it. And there's going to be more of it. Because, again, all those teams drafting at the top, the Carolinas and the Indianapolises of the world, the Houstons, they're all interested in QBs. We've got on-campus workouts coming up with guys like Richardson, Stroud, and Young. So if you don't like hearing about quarterbacks, then you might want to just check out for the next 6-7 weeks because it's the NFL, man. That's all you're going to hear about. We will not hear any more NFL today. I'm done with the NFL. Baseball. Update you on any spring notes that we got. We'll see what's shaking in Florida and Arizona. Also, our positional focus at third base takes us to the guys who were letdowns in 2022. What can they be in 2023? I will tell you next, right here on BSN.
Washington Commander fans, it's time to rejoice. The day you've been waiting for seems like it's finally on the way. And you know what day I'm talking about. No, not the next time you have a parade down Constitution Avenue. That's still years away. But the day you get to say goodbye to the man who has owned that franchise since 1999. It's Daniel Snyder. You know it well because he's been the worst owner in sports in the 24 years he's owned that football team. That once proud franchise, the Washington Redskins, the Hogs, the championships, Doug Williams, Joe Gibbs. Now what you have left behind? Memories of Albert Hainsworth. How did that work out? Horrible free agent signings, not to mention the scandals. Just this past 18 months alone, the horrible reveal of the Commanders' team name when everybody knew who it was the day before. Oh, that Sean Taylor statue, that gimmick, that joke. How about the touchdown celebration of the mascot, the Tutty? That was horrible. You keep getting in your way, time and time again. The best thing you had for your fan base this offseason was hiring them an offensive coordinator. And now the later scandals, financial misconduct, all these things you got going on. Yet you want Roger Goodell in the NFL to look the other way while you negotiate your sale of the team on your terms. It don't work like that. Only person you really got on your side is Jerry Jones, and it's not going to be enough. So go ahead, Daniel Snyder. Do the right thing. Sell the team, go on about your business. Don't worry about this no more. The fan base deserves better. You've done a lot to tear this situation down. It's just time to walk away. Don't try to negotiate your own terms. Do the right thing and give the Washington, D.C. natives, give the people inside the Capitol Beltway their team back. You can find more contents like this at Bettor Network on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.
Now back to Kyle Elfring.
Okay, making our way through another edition of Lunch Money. Hope you've been able to put up with me and this voice the last 2 days. I know a lot of you would appreciate just a break once in a while. Check in with Ray Flowers. Well, Ray's under the weather, so he's doing his best to get back on his feet, get set for that big Hollywood highlights get together tomorrow. So should be a lot of fun. Tomorrow, that is 12 to 2, I think, is the broadcast time there. So do check that out as we kind of get you set for the Oscars. Like I said, if we were going to do a Kyle Elfring Talks the 95th Annual Academy Awards, I would be purely useless. Not going to help you there. I'm trying to think, and I'm serious on this. I'm interested to see where you in the chat room stand on this. I'm trying to think. If I went and saw a single movie this year in the last 12 months, don't think I have. I could be incorrect on that. I'll have to check. If my wife heard that, she'd tell me, see, that's why we need to get out more. Really? Not a single movie. My wife enjoys movies too, and I don't dislike them. What I'm struggling with is I rarely find movies that I say, ooh, I want to go see that. Like I got to drop everything and go see that. So I don't know. And maybe it's not so bad to admit you haven't been to a theater in a while, because nobody's going to theaters, are they? Everybody just sits and waits to stream it at some point. Anyway, tomorrow we will stay away from this year in particular with great movies, and we'll talk about great movies of all time. We got some fun categories, fun personalities, and guests that are joining us, so it should be a good time. Coming up on Thursday, checking in on the world of baseball, Jake DeGrom. Jake DeGrom threw 35 pitches to hitters. I like how they phrase this in the report. Without incident on Wednesday. I don't know if the guys were swinging and nobody got hurt, or nobody got hit, or he didn't get hurt, but without incident for Jake DeGrom. So bravo, Jake. You made it through at least 35 pitches. Velocity looked good. Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News is reporting 98, 99. So he's throwing hard. And I would guess maybe middle of next week, March 12th, 13th, thereabouts. Jake DeGrom aiming for that first spring training appearance. Still waiting for his first chance to get out there on the hill and throw for the Texas Rangers. Told you about Victor Robles being helped off the field. We don't have an update there. Couple of quick statistical things that I saw this morning from spring training. Where was it? Oh, there it is. Matt Boyd yesterday. Now, I'm not going to push you in the direction of Matt Boyd, but he had 7 strikeouts in 3 innings for Detroit. Zach Gallen was kind of the opposite, making his debut yesterday. 4 walks and 4 runs scored in 2+ innings. So that's not good for Zach Gallen. And then Seth Lugo. This is kind of hard to do in spring training. Seth Lugo gave up 7 hits and walked a batter in 3 1/3 innings. So 8 base runners in 3 1/3. No runs. That's what they call luck. Okay. So remember that when somebody tells you that Seth Lugo has a great ERA in the spring, you can tell them, yeah, but he led 8 guys on base in 3 1/3 innings, and somehow, some way, none of them scored. So make sure to remind them that with Seth Lugo. Earlier in the show, we gave you some third basemen who surprised and outdid their ADP in 2022. Now we give you the other side of that argument, the third basemen who were letdowns in 2022 and did not come close to their ADP of a year ago. Got a few names here, and I'll tell you right off the top. None of these guys will be dudes that like you're excited for. Because why? Because they've all been around in baseball for a while. Like literally. They're all vets. And if there's one thing I know about fantasy baseball players, one thing, it's that nobody really cares about vets. You know, once you're past the age of 30, get out of here. Which leads us to Anthony Rendon. Oh, Anthony Rendon. Last year, he was going as the 10th third baseman. Now, there is still some love for Anthony Rendon. He's not 10th anymore, but Anthony Rendon is 20th. Now, here's what I say about Rendon. I don't think he's coming back. I don't think we have that high water mark of 2-3 years ago. Which, as Ray corrected me this week, Anthony Rendon, you could say he had a good, 3 years or so, really good. But I don't think we're getting back there. That being said, this guy is going off the board around pick 240. That's okay. That's okay. I can stomach that. I still don't love it. Last year, I sat here all in the preseason and said, Anthony Rendon is the 10th third baseman. Hell no. Just not convinced. Now the price is 50% of that. 100%, you could even say. I guess that's how you would actually say that. Because instead of pick 120, he's pick 240. So we've dropped the price tag dramatically on Rendon. So now, because of that price tag, it's fine. Like, what are you getting in the 20th round? You probably aren't getting guys who've done what Anthony Rendon has done multiple times in his career, right? Probably not getting those guys in the 20th round. So I don't think he's got much in the tank, and I wouldn't bet on health. But at that price tag, why not? Here's another guy, Justin Turner. Justin Turner has moved from Los Angeles to Boston. Last year, you had to pay for Justin Turner as a third baseman 1. That's what you had to pay up on Turner. Now you don't have to do that. He's outside the top 20. Now, of course, we had that scary incident just the other day. What was it? Yesterday, 2 days ago, where Anthony Rendon was hit by a pitch from Matt Manning. Now, we are told he's fine and no fractures and any of that stuff. But you look at Justin Turner, and now that probably adjusts expectations slightly. Maybe not. I actually think of Turner as a bit of a sleeper this year, and I'll tell you why. He's a DH. That's it. He doesn't have to play in the field. So I love that part. If he does play in the field, it's probably at first base. So I like that part. You could get third base, first base eligibility. You got a guy who doesn't have to worry about the wear and tear of fielding the baseball. And he probably bats third or fourth in the Boston lineup. Need I add, he's a right-handed hitter. Got a great ballpark. Take aim at the monster. Again, cost is nothing on Justin Turner. Right now, Justin Turner, let me see how much I got to cycle down here. Pick number 260, 24th off the board. No problem. No problemo. Yoan Moncada. I can call him a vet, right? Yoan Moncada has been a constant tease. I will say that at this juncture, and I have fallen for it before, at this juncture, Yoan Moncada, it's just probably not going to happen. Probably not. But now you don't have to pay for it to happen. And really you haven't for 2 or 3 years. He is what he is, which is like a 240 hitter with 12 to 15 home run power. Maybe gets you 75 ribbies in a good year. Probably doesn't do it for you, right? I will say he's 28. Doesn't he feel like he's 48 when I say Yoan Moncada? He's dirt cheap this year. And then one last name is Josh Donaldson. Last season, 18th third baseman off the board, and the hope was, he'll figure it out with the Yankees, and how can he not slug? Well, he didn't. He was hurt all year. He's lost his bat speed. Move along. I'm not interested in Donaldson. And they have young guns behind him that they can bring up and play in his stead. They can even move Isaiah Kiner-Falefa over to third base. Of all these guys, Rendon, Turner, Moncada, and Donaldson, I'm probably least interested in Moncada because there just isn't an upside. Donaldson, I don't see anything rebounding here. I actually do like Turner. I think there is a rebound there. And I think Rendon at his price, 100% fine. Zero doubt with Windrum. Again, the price tag, 20th round. Why the heck not? Got more third baseman and more NL East discussion coming your way on Friday. Again, we won't have a regular show tomorrow. We will have the Hollywood highlights, but no regular show. So we'll be back on Friday at 12 Eastern. Time now to get you our dessert to go. And I referenced this earlier. At the very start of the show, I said, man, you can go to Walmart and find like anything. Now we have found that there is something else you can find from Walmart. You can find a species that predates dinosaurs, at least I'm told. And it's a species that we thought was like eradicated from the earth 70 years ago. I kid you not here. Here's where we go. This is in Fayetteville, Arkansas. An insect found on the side of a Fayetteville, Arkansas Walmart has been identified as the species, and forgive me here, Polystochodes punctuata. I don't know. It's a big insect with big wings. Yeah, it's like something like we'll talk about this in the Hollywood highlights, but the famous poster of Silence of the Lambs with the moth, I think it is, over Jodie Foster's lips. That's what this thing looks like, except bigger. Anyway, somebody was walking into a mall, actually was walking into it about 10 years ago and saw this thing on the side of the Walmart. And they said, holy cow, never seen anything like that. Well, they got it. It is a giant lacewing. It is the first discovery of the giant lacewing since the 50s. It used to be out east. Now it's in Arkansas. So that is what we're looking at. I can't believe, yes, it is from the Jurassic era. Jurassic era. Now, if there's one, there's two, right? It's kind of like mice in your house. There's never just one. It's usually a flock of them. So I guess these lacewings are hanging out in Arkansas, and it's very, very easy to hide out in Arkansas. Look, they've been hiding out there for 50 years. Nobody even bothered them. Then one day, a lacewing had to go out and pick up some bug repellent, and it was discovered. And now everybody's looking for lacewings. Except me, I'm not looking for lacewings, but if you are, go to Arkansas. That is where you can find them. Okay, that is your dessert for the day. We do it every day here on Lunch Money. Coming up next, you have Moose and Keith. After them, it is the playbook. Again, the Bettor cast tonight is NBA style. Bettor cast tonight is New Orleans hosting Dallas. That begins at 7:30 Eastern. Kind of a fun way to enjoy the games that you might be enjoying as is. So if you're an NBA guy and going to be watching the Mavericks and the Pelicans, by all means, jump onto the app, tune in, have some fun, answer some questions, do some trivia, win some prizes. Got gift cards to the Bettor Sports Shop. I think a lot of other prizes as we go through the process. And they do it every night. They kind of pick a different event each and every night. So maybe you can check it out at the very least tonight and see if you're interested in that. Do want to thank our producers, Heather Klein and Josh Winchester. Also, Ray Flowers, we wish you our best. It's very unlike Ray. I was telling Heather, our producer, this. It's missed 2 days. I have been on air with Ray for close to 14 years, I think it is. Been a long time. I cannot recall Ray ever being sick on back-to-back days. I doubt his analytics ever saw this. Right? Okay. Anyway, we hope he's feeling better. Hope everybody out there is doing well. Appreciate you tuning in for the last couple of days. That will do it for me. Back tomorrow with Hollywood highlights. Gonna have some fun here on BSN. 12 o'clock Eastern for that. We'll see you on Thursday.